Hello, everyone. Welcome to the movie date with Rob and Matt, a podcast for people who enjoy film but don't want to be too pretentious about it. And I'm Matt.
And I'm Rob.
And that epic beginning.
Is that your Sean Bean? I have a Sean Bean. Hold on one second. Winter is coming.
Mine was a little Kit Harington there. Rob, with Rob and Matt.
That's not bad. You have to be more out of breath, though.
Yeah, wait.
Jon Snow always sounds like he's a little like,
It's a movie date
you're not
with Rob and Matt.
a free woman. You're my prisoner. He's always like,
Yeah, he's always a little.
it's like Mark Wahlberg when you do it. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, it's
Mark
Winterfell's kind of in a lot of trouble right now.
Say hi to your mother for me. Like he always has that kind of feel.
They're coming up from Southie.
But
Or my favorite Thrones voice to do is it Ian Rowan who plays Ramsay? Ian Rowan?
yes, or is it Ewan?
Ewan.
Yeah.
But he's got that wonderful voice that he does. It's always so just. I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, he's good.
He's one of my favorite parts of this,
Yeah.
which goes up against what we were talking about before about villain types.
Mm-hmm.
He is literally just, I'm evil, and I don't know, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, he's all right.
So we're
I
talking
like
about
his dad too, Roose Bolton.
Roose Bolton, yeah, and that guy who plays him. Even though in the books, like he's illustrated to be way more creepy, and this he's just kind of a balding guy.
Yeah.
So we're
He's also
talking.
also in Justice League.
Who is he in Justice
He
League?
plays the guy that Wonder Woman stops.
Oh, that's right, the guy, the nihilist terrorist,
Down with the modern world, back to the dark ages, and the holy blah 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 of fear, whatever. That guy.
something like that.
Yep.
Well, why are we talking about a show that's been over for so long? Because it's the
Well, I can only
anniversary.
imagine because we're going to talk about it.
Yes. So it's the anniversary, around the time of the anniversary of the series finale of one of the largest media franchises of the last decade. I think only next to certain reality television contest shows and Marvel. We're talking about HBO's mega success, Game of Thrones, today, because nothing's in theaters right now because there are no theaters. This is going to be a bonus episode.
That's
It's kind
right,
of a
baby.
nostalgic bonus episode. And we're going to be discussing a little bit of Game of Thrones and, most importantly, what went wrong to its finale.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good. I'm looking through my notes here to find. I had an outline.
You're going to have to help me out a lot. My phone is dead, so I don't have any notes available
That's
right
all right.
now. I'm winging a lot of this. So there will be some editing here.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going through. I have a Game of Thrones.
Wiki.
Not a wiki, but just like some stuff that I wanted to go through with.
Song of Wiki and Fire.
That's a real thing. I've
I know.
I've gone down that wiki before.
I mean, there are some in every given wiki, fan wiki, you will find an article about like a minor character that's longer than the actual Wikipedia article for like Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. Seems wrong. Seems a little wrong, doesn't it?
Oh, another good voice is the one I'm always trying to get is Aidan Gillian's Peter Baelish.
He's good.
Sansa, is there something I can give you that would be helpful?
Yeah.
He's got that breathy Irish tone. Aidan Gillian is he's kind of runs the gamut of like, is he a good actor or is he just really?
I think he's a good actor.
It depends on the role, though.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he's
He's
alright.
good, and he's good. I think we talked about it before when we talked about.
Okay, we're just gonna have to wing it. So yeah, we're talking about Game of Thrones, and we don't have nearly enough time in this whole episode to go through the entirety of the show.
Not at all.
But I think we're gonna focus on the last season and some problems therein, and we'll probably like trace the show and talk about our favorite
and it's
moments.
lasting legacy now because it's almost like a year later. It's like the show never happened because I think it was like our big mass populist media shame, and so we all just kind of hid it away and like, oh, game of what now?
Yeah.
Isn't Westworld great?
Westworld, I haven't even started seeing it yet. I need to.
Hot take here. First season's really good. It's really wordy and it's really into itself.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of. Everybody's so clever and everyone's so sharp and everything everybody says is so philosophical and important that that's more unrealistic in the dialogue than robot people. Like that's more believable than the way that people talk in it, and that's kind of a bummer.
I predicted like, second season the machines are going to become like self-aware or something, and then they're going to
Lead a rebellion.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I haven't seen the show, but I know I'm right.
You're not wrong.
But I thought that Have you seen? First of all, have you seen all of Game of Thrones? I guess.
Yes, but the entirety of it as a whole, I think I was just telling you, I've rewatched the first 2 seasons, but then after that was my phone dying out on me. I've seen I've rewatched the first 2 seasons, but about midway through the third, I kind of wavered and fell off of that. And then the last season is pretty fresh on my mind, and a little bit of the season before that. So book beginnings, book ends, but that middle section is all a cluster for me.
Yeah, and
it's very hazy.
Yeah, I remember I read like the first 4 books, and then like
And I've only read a little bit of both the first 2 books. Like I started halfway through A Game of Thrones, and then a little bit of
one thing that the show does better is
Clash of Kings.
It takes stuff that happens in later books and it starts setting them up real quick. And like by the time, like for example, like the arc with Theon and Ramsay Bolton, that doesn't happen till roughly like book 4 or 5, if I remember. But by the time we get to the end of season 2, they've already started sort of setting it up.
Right.
So that's something that's like, I think the show does that much better than like the book. The books has a tendency to drag things out.
Well, they've also pack it with more characters. They pack it with more side arcs. Because at least in the show, I was just thinking about this, about one of the things that the show did so well, and we can get into it, is like the certain protagonist roles and arcs and just good casting. Like because when you're doing a legacy series where you know you're going to have a lot of a young cast that are going to grow into these characters, same with the Harry Potter crew, it's like you want to make sure you're nailing it off the bat.
Right.
And specifically for all the Stark kids, Kit Harington, Richard Madden.
Richard Madden should play John Constantine in a Justice League Dark movie.
That'd be okay.
He's got
a good look. Macy Williams.
I just
Isaac
watched
Newton
Justice
Wright.
League Dark Apocalypse War downstairs. The new
animated one.
Yeah, and it's the end of like the last 20 DC animated films. It's pretty good. It has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I watched it and I was like,
the clips I've seen of it look pretty good and gnarly.
I dig it for sure. It's a hard R too. There's like some real gore in it and stuff.
Yeah, I know some people get like torn in half and everything. Like,
which I didn't care for as much because like some of my favorite characters get treated in ways that I was like, I don't like that. but I appreciate that they take a big swing at it. At the end, Superman turns into Trigon Superman, where the spirit of Trigon comes out of Raven, and a depowered Superman is brought sort of. Darkseid injects him with liquid kryptonite to make him human, so that he can never rise up against him and stuff.
Because I know also like one of Superman's only weaknesses is magic.
Yeah,
magic and the supernatural, essentially.
And one of their plans to defeat Darkseid is to bring out Trigon, Raven's father, that's in her brain all the time and stuff.
Right.
And when he does that, John Constantine brings him out to like bring him into, says, "Oh, I brought you out, and now you can kill this guy, and you can use me as your host. I'm a very powerful magical being or whatever." And he looks over at Superman and he goes, "Nah, I'm gonna go with this one."
Yeah, I like the alien man.
And he goes inside,
big strong alien man.
He goes inside Superman, and which gives him like it burns the kryptonite out of his blood and stuff, and like gives him his powers back. And it's like Demon Superman versus Darkseid.
That's dope.
It's pretty metal.
That's kind of cool. That's deep.
Yeah,
I can with that.
But yeah. Anyway, enough of that. We'll talk about that. As I was watching it though, I was very much like, this is very reminiscent of like the stuff that we've heard about the Snyder Cut. Like Darkseid wins in the opening, and like it's a like 3 years later, and the Earth is totally destroyed, and parademons loom the streets and stuff, and underground resistance fighters. It's very much like Nightmare Batman sequence stuff, and I was like, I'm on board for this.
No, I'm cool with
anyway,
that.
Back to Game of Thrones. You were not the most into like high fantasy stuff.
Not particularly.
So what about this show?
Well, there becomes the argument that I'm sure a lot of people would have with me about this is I don't see Game of Thrones as high fantasy. I see it as kind of, because when I think high fantasy, I go to a Tolkien sort of thing or a Robert Jordan sort of thing where it's like magic, creatures, all that is present and available and happening. That's high fantasy to me. Now, I'm not a scholar on the genres, but like a mid fantasy, like a regular.
Excuse me, sir. No, I'm kidding.
But what makes Game of Thrones so interesting, or Song of Ice and Fire in general, and what kind of drew me in, I imagine drew millions of other people in, is it opens with a world that is mostly regular.
Yeah.
Long mythology of dragons, long mythology of the White Walkers and other creatures and things like that, and magic and things. There are happenings, there's the the worshippers of the gods and the Red Woman and people who have these particular powers, but mostly it's just political intrigue and people versus people, and death is death, and there's a lot of it. But
It's kept very vague.
yes,
Purposefully so, I would imagine.
but it's because of the reactions that people have of these mythologies and these classic legends and things now coming to life. Dragons come back, and that's a big deal. And the walkers are real. No one wants to believe that, no, there's not zombie people up north. Yes, there are.
Yeah.
And they're an existential threat. So it's a world that had forgotten the validity of its fantasy elements until those fantasy elements come hurling back into their reality.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think it's. I would agree with all that, and I would say maybe it's not high fantasy, but it's like phrase that has been coined by like a lot of articles. It's like it's grim fantasy,
Dark fantasy.
yeah, or dark fantasy, or gritty fantasy, as some people call it. It's very much in line with like Carl Edward Wagner's books and like The Black Company. It's very much like there are otherworldly elements, but it's mostly like it's political intrigue and
Military
conquests and
combat.
stuff like that.
Right.
But I will say, like, when we do get the things that like make it interesting, if it didn't have the fantastical elements to it, the magics, the what few creatures there are, like most of the creatures are usually just creatures that exist in our world, but a little different.
Yeah.
Like there's a part in like when the wildlings attack, there's like they attack the wall, and there's mammoths. Like a mammoth is just that's an elephant. It's just a bigger
it's
elephant.
just a bigger elephant. Or dire wolves, the central
Bigger
themed
wolves.
creature. They're just big CGI wolves.
Yeah.
And I bet there are wolves that are that big
Yeah.
in some parts of the
I
world.
mean, those wolves are so big you could almost ride it as a horse.
Right.
Like they're definitely bigger than like a real wolf, but not by much. And like giants are just like it's just a man but bigger.
Yeah, but giants are also of their own race. Like they all have their own names.
They're not human.
And, they're not
necessarily.
human. No, but then there's only a handful of them left.
And then the only other ones that are like that's a real thing that doesn't exist would be like the children of the forest, the dragons, and like the White Walkers. But most of the things that are fantastical are things that
well, also
we
like
can make easily think about.
once
like,
they go over to Essos, all the faceless men in general, all the
magic, yeah, like
the wizards, those of Mirin
Meereen?
of Marin, those pale.
Oh, you mean the warlocks of Karth?
Yeah, of
the
Karth.
greatest city that ever was or ever will be.
Right.
It's not that great. Fine.
But those are also mystical elements that have been in play.
Yeah,
and then
and they imply
Melisandre
that
and
magic is
everything like
dead in the world with the died with the dragons. And that's a big thing in the book, because like the dragons were like magic; they were the lifeblood of magic, and when they died, magic died.
Magic
And when
died
they
as
came
well.
Back, it sort of came back.
It's kind of like when our latest episode on Onward. It's kind of in that world where it's magic and everything has been buried in myth, and now it's just the biggest fear are bloodlines. The biggest fear are other people until, like I said, dragons come and destroy your city.
So let's start talking about. We're going to assume if you're listening to this, you've seen the show. If you haven't seen
Right.
the show, watch it. It's a pretty good show, I think.
I mean, at least I'm basing a lot on some videos and I've watched and everything. And one big one was on YouTube was Lindsay Ellis did a really great sort of last look at what went wrong with this last season. And she brought up the interesting point of, for us who had invested so much time, a decade worth of time into the series to reach this conclusion, the question is like, do we just, I mean, going back to the first season, we see how great it was. Like the dialogue is so good, the writing is so sharp, the characters are so clear. To watch that both ebb and flow into eventually hitting the Mariana Trench and just dropping off.
Yeah.
I think there is still validity in rewatching the beginning of the seasons on.
Yeah.
Because you get to see how good it originally was.
I would say that it's sort of like the Star Wars prequels for me. The Star Wars prequels by themselves, if I were to describe to you, let's pretend like episode 1, 2, and 3 didn't exist. And I said, Matt, I think they should make a story about like decades before A New Hope, and they should do young Obi-Wan and his master, and they go off and they're trying to settle a big war that's about to happen, and they go to Tatooine and they find a young Darth Vader, and he becomes their Padawan at the end. Like you'd be like, oh, that's a great idea for a movie.
I could watch that. I would enjoy that.
And then I would be like, in the second movie, like he can be growing up, and then the war is started. Like, so it's not that the ideas are bad; it's that the execution
is everything.
faulty.
Right.
I think I think that's what it is. When with regards to the last season, and there are things in the last season that I like, but I think it's a far cry from like some of my favorite stuff in the show, and it left me with a very bitter taste in my mouth.
Oh, Yeah, I also remember where I was when I watched that last episode too, because I was on vacation with family, and we were sharing a hotel room, and I was just like, I had on my phone with headphones in under a blanket, just like, this seems appropriate. Just watching it that way, I'm like, yeah, this seems about right to watch the series finale from Amazon.
Yeah, me and my family got together every week and watched it at my aunt's house. It was like, it's a big deal. We had Game of Thrones nights every weekend, every Sunday.
Well, that's a good point to talk about. Is I don't think like to easily explain how big Game of Thrones was.
Yeah.
Like.
It went from nothing to like the first season came out and people were like, I really like this, but it didn't become like a big thing till I think about season 3.
I was gonna say it didn't really need a lot of word of mouth. Like when it hit hard. Like yeah, that first season people were kind of like slowly getting on board. Like what is this gonna be? And then, but I think not too long after. It became a giant cultural milestone. Like I said, disregarding popular cable network television or reality shows or competition shows that you can look at the ratings and everything to see if they're super popular.
Yeah.
Pop culturally, Game of Thrones it was and is the biggest television show of all time.
Yeah.
Like it is a massive success. And the fact that it was a success like that shows that there was a niche for that no one thought they needed, which is that they wanted a more raw fantasy series.
Yeah.
And if you would have put money on that, it'd been like, no, it's going to be like this, like, it's going to be a Firefly sort of thing. Like, it's going to be a high budget sort of niche. Nope. It was a massive success.
Yeah.
The biggest success.
Yeah. And I think that, like, a big part of that, like, I think we can start getting into, like, the nitty gritty of it. I think that the best thing that I like about Game of Thrones, the thing that makes me watch, is not just the fantastical elements, but is, like, character development, and characterization. It has one thing the show and George R.R. Martin in general does. He does a great job of taking characters and developing them over time to where even your opinion of them changes drastically by the time you've reached a certain point. Like a good example, that would be like the character of Jaime Lannister.
I was just gonna say Jaime Lannister, who comes from his original start as the character he
despise
is.
Him.
Yeah,
and then somewhere around the middle, you start to. I don't think I ever like him as a person, but I go, oh, I think I start to understand like how his worldview came about.
Yeah, you don't, because he goes from being literally the golden boy, like literally from the Lannister family, the family of gold, the family of lions. He is the golden child, and he's also an incestuous sycophant and narcissist, child murderer, attempted child murderer, who kills in the street willingly, and he's the epitome of privilege. Yes, is what one would say. But also he's saddled with being, the Kingslayer. And for the audience watching it, we know that, King Aerys was a horrible human being, that all of us are like, yeah, good, he's dead. But in the world of Westeros, a lot of people are like, no, that's a most terrible thing you can do. Yeah,
you sacrifice, you broke your oath or whatever.
Right. It's not a good thing. For us, we're just like, yeah, fuck that guy. He was a monster. He's going to kill millions of people.
Yeah, and I think Jaime Lannister is frustrated by the fact that, like, Westeros is a giant contradiction of like a bunch of oaths they make you swear, and he goes, protect the weak, protect the helpless. It's like, well, what if the king wants to kill the weak and the helpless?
Well, it shows this. I think one of the themes of the whole series is the hypocrisy of nobility
or noble classes or whatever.
Well, it's like and the most noble class, the Starks, at least that Stark family, our protagonist group, are the most devastated and destroyed throughout the whole series, especially when they're broken apart and go on all their different arcs. The most honorable are punished by the most cunning. But which is why when we get to the end of the series, that's when Tyrion floats the idea of a democracy, because it's like, well, the rest of that stuff doesn't work. Yeah. So we've seen all the bloodshed that comes from honor and these traditional roles of fealty and bloodlines have led to nothing but bloodshed. Yeah. So that's an interesting thing they throw in. But yeah, Jaime is a great example of a character who I end up actually liking him. Yeah. Or
I never quite make the jump.
You never quite make it.
There's parts where I have sympathy. The part where I have the most sympathy was where he talks about like when he talks to Brienne in the tub.
That's
about
what I
the
was
moment where he kills the Mad King, and it's very well acted by Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
Yeah,
and
he's
he goes,
great.
he talks about how when they knew they were going to lose, when Aerys knew he was going to lose, he became obsessed with wildfire and began stashing it around the city. And when he knew Rhaegar had been defeated at the Trident and Robert Baratheon was coming to the city, like, my father brought the Lannister army to the city. And he said, I begged them to let them in, and he was going to help defend the city. And he goes, I knew my father better than that. He never chooses the losing side. And he goes, I told my father, I think he says, I told Aerys not to let him in because I think he knew what his dad was going to do. And then Grand Maester Pycelle, that old fucking fraud.
Yep. Talk about the hypocrisy of even the religious sects and everything.
Well, I guess the Maesters are religious, aren't they? They're like a weird quasi-religious doctor priest thing.
Yeah, people. I mean I think they're more kind of like cardinals almost, or they're representatives and
but they're also like they're sort of your stewards and you're the most
the keepers of
knowledgeable
information
people.
and everything. But
yeah,
most of them are corrupt old men.
Yeah, and he tells them, and like there's like a pedophilia element about like the Catholic Church in there. I don't know if that's in the book as much. I never remember reading that much about that in the book. I think that's but yeah, Grand Maester Pycelle says like let him in. Tywin Lannister was always a loyal,
Subject
servant to the crown,
to the Targaryen family.
And he does, and Tywin sacks the city. Tywin Lannister is another person who I really grew to like the actor
Charles Dance.
But as a man,
phenomenal.
I'm like, there's not a worse person that's ever lived.
Yeah, Charles Dance's performance as Tywin.
I do a great Charles Dance to my lady downstairs. I do it all the time. There's the part where he orders Tyrion to marry Sansa Stark, and he orders Cersei to marry Sir Loras, and my girlfriend will always be walking by in the kitchen, and I'll be like, "And you will marry Sir Loras." Like I will
marry Sir Loras.
Yeah.
Well, he's a great example of a character that is the most like he's the ideal of the leader, like of the no nonsense leader, but he's also an abusive and ultimately corrupt individual as well.
I don't know if he's corrupt. It's just that he's abusive. Almost diminutizes it. I'd be like, he's brutal. He is like a.
But he's brutality hidden under aristocracy.
He's like a Vlad the Impaler or something.
Like which is funny because we were talking about Roose Bolton, who is almost literally a Vlad the Impaler character, but his brutality is more open than Tywin's is in some respects, even though Tywin is also a mass murderer as well.
Tywin understands the necessity of being seen as like a noble man, or like he understands the value of anonymity and like a little bit of vagueness. But yeah, he comes to the city and he sacks the city, and then Aerys says like, all right, he turns to his pyromancer and says like, burn it all, burn them in their homes, burn them in their beds. And he goes, I killed the pyromancer first, and then I drew my sword and I stuck it through Aerys's back. And then he goes, I don't think he thought he was gonna die. I think he thought he was gonna rise again as a dragon and burn his enemies again. And he goes, I slit his throat to make sure that didn't happen. And then he goes, and right then is where Ned Stark walked in and found me. And he goes, and Brienne says, like, why didn't you tell Ned Stark about this? Why didn't you tell anybody? And he goes, do you think Ned Stark wanted to hear my side of the story? And he goes, he judged me from the first moment he saw me. And then he has this really great line, and he's delirious, I should say, at this point, because he lost his hand.
He had his fighting hand was cut off. That's the beginning of his destructive. He's been in every major battle. He's the ideal, because everyone also in a lot of these like fan groups and everything talks about who's the best swordsman in Westeros that's alive.
Yeah.
Because obviously there are a lot of great swordsmen from the books and great swordsmen in the series.
I've watched these videos too, and I think they're mostly wrong. I think that the best ones are, because you have to go by what you see.
Yeah.
Like, Jaime is revered as one of the best swordsmen, but every time we see him fight, he almost loses.
Yeah, and
So,
then he does lose his hand.
Because,
He's mostly
and the only time he almost they changed stuff from the show to the book, so I'm kind of like separating a little bit of that. Like in the books, he doesn't attack Ned Stark that way. He has his men attack Ned Stark, and they kill his men.
Right.
And then they attack Ned Stark, and his horse collapses onto Ned Stark and like breaks his leg. That's sort of what happens.
Right. And
if we're going by the show, he very
instigates
likely
the attack.
Yeah, he instigates the attack, and that's
stabs
probably,
one of the guard through the eye. I remember that was one of the first scenes I remember seeing of the show. Is that episode?
It's also like the first time we get to like some real harsh violence.
Yeah,
because that was awful. I
mean,
remember
you get some
like,
beheadings early on, but that battle sequence you kind of gets a frame of like, this is the kind of show this is.
Yeah, and I remember thinking like that's when I really was like, I don't like this guy. He can do something like this and face no consequences
whatsoever.
And I feel like he almost loses to Ned Stark, essentially. Ned Stark doesn't buckle until a guy comes and stabs him in the back of his leg. And Jaime doesn't kill him because he wants to kill him personally. He wants to kill Ned Stark at his best so he can prove that he was better than him.
Because also Ned has how many years on him too?
Ned is like 10 years older than him.
Yeah.
Roughly, at least. And so yeah, there's a line when he's in the tub and he's losing his mind. He says, "By what right does the wolf judge the lion?" And then he passes out, and Brienne catches him, and she says, "Someone help! It's the Kingslayer, help!" And he goes, "Jaime," and he says, "My name is Jaime." And he's talking about how like, I'm not the Kingslayer. My name is Jaime Lannister. And that's the part where I was like, I can start to appreciate the life he's had and what led to all that. I still never quite get to liking him.
Well, you also kind of end up in that situation where,
and that happens through dozens of characters through the show.
Yes,
we should probably start moving faster.
Yeah. So, that's a good point to bring up. Is what's great about this series is watching where all these characters end up. For example, like I was talking about, you put a big bet when you cast a lot of young actors for the beginning of their roles. And then by the end, whoever's left has now sort of lived in these characters for so long. So by the time you're midway through, you're like, I want nothing more than for Jon to see Arya again. I want nothing more than Sansa to use these wits that we know that she has to get out of all these traumatic situations, and all of it is due to the performances of this central cast of characters. And then, obviously you get fan favorites, Tyrion, who I think this is one of the big problems of the show is by the midsection and all that. If you're not a principal character, the writers don't know what to do with you. And you reading the books, you have a better idea of what happens with Tyrion.
There's something I like to call the Daenerys, the Daenerys tractor beam, where the closer you get to Daenerys Targaryen, the less interesting your character becomes.
That's a good point. Yeah, that checks out. That checks out. Unless you're Jorah Mormont, who's been there from the beginning, but he becomes more interesting when he's exiled from her and out of her range a little bit.
I think when I was reading the books, I was very much like, I really wish Dany would fall in love with this guy because he kind of deserves it. He seems to be a really good man who's humble, and he understands the mistakes that he's made. Like he said, he sold men into slavery and stuff, and that's why he left Westeros and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's very obvious moments in the books where Dany knows that he loves her. And it feels, when she exiles him, I feel jilted because like I felt very angry for him because I was like, he's kind of done a lot of great things for her, and you don't kick someone who's like that loyal to you out. And I feel like he might be one of the exceptions to the rule as far as like the Dany beam. But whether we're talking about people like Tyrion or we're talking about like Barristan Selmy is kind of like that.
Yeah.
Where he's like at the very best, he's a secondary character.
Right. But he's also one of those great swordsmen as well. He's one of those great warriors.
Yeah. But
now he's an old man.
But yeah, people like Dario is kind of boring. Like by the time like
when he's introduced as this like super cool, colorful pirate guy,
and then now he's just like, I live to serve you, my queen, and I'm like, that's interesting.
And then his character just by the series just disappears.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you don't know what to do with these characters, so you either kill them or worse, just they go to another planet.
And I think that like that's part of the thing. I'll say one of my biggest criticisms throughout the show and the last season became very apparent is I was always like, Dany is not someone who I think can lead. I was always like, I don't think she has the temperament to be a good leader or a good ruler, because throughout the whole show she is very much fire and blood. I will take back what is mine. And I was like, is that the kind of person that you want to lead?
But she also, and I think this is because this comes out of some of the reviews I've seen, is that Dany has been shown, it's fire and blood. That's kind of her ultimate objective.
Yeah.
But throughout using that objective to conquer, she finds almost a new life in being a liberator.
Yeah.
She single-handedly destroys slavery in Essos and punishes those who challenge that.
Yeah.
She becomes the breaker of chains. She liberates all these different patriarchal power systems and is going to bring that over. And that seems to be her arc until the writers drop it.
Yeah.
That she's like, no, I started as a kid who inherited power through brutality and then have inherently supernatural power.
Yeah.
Discovers her leadership, becomes that leader, and now is like, I now have a great army, and that army would not exist not just for dragons, but because of me.
Yeah.
And then
I think they tried to give her like the weight of leadership and the weight of ruling something and like making decisions. Like you set everyone free. What does that mean?
Right.
Is crime going to go up? Is like all these things, like violence is going to go up. You're going to have to deal with those things. And like, that's interesting. I think she'd be a fine ruler, but there is a weird air of entitlement to her. Like,
well, that's the Targaryen
I was always like,
thing
what are you
as
going to
well.
do? Yeah. I was like, what are you going to do when you go to Westeros and demand people follow you or you burn them? They're just going to see you're just like Robert Baratheon or your father or Tywin Lannister, a man who rules because, I have the biggest army and I can commit the most horrible acts of bloodshed, which entitles me to rulership.
And I think the biggest problem with that is not Daenerys. I think it is just the scriptwriters. I think it's just the scriptwriters not knowing what to do with the weight of her leadership.
Yeah.
So they just like, she's a mad woman. Well, that's not fair to the character you developed.
Yeah.
In a way, it feels deceitful towards that character, and it's kind of, again, Rise of Skywalker, where I'm like, J.J. Abrams created these characters, so now why in this movie does he feel burdened with them? Like he doesn't want to be around them. So these side characters that he built that are so exciting that we've grown to love, if you love it, now have nothing to do, and they almost feel begrudging. And I feel like that's kind of what these writers, Benioff and Bryce, kind of ended up inheriting. It's just like, we don't know what to do with our most powerful character.
Yeah.
With that point, I want to go into talking about characters.
Yes.
Who are some of your favorite characters?
I have a list here. Baby.
Okay, because I'll
good and bad ones. I'll say, like, I have characters that I think are bad. Like they're bad characters, but I like their characters. Like as far as like what the show does with them. And then there are characters who I think they're good characters and stuff, but who
this is also something that is pretty amazing that Game of Thrones was able to do as a crossover success, is present a giant cast of fantastical characters and keep it steady.
A lot of my favorite characters are secondary characters.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think that, like, to put the bow end on Dany real quick, I think my favorite parts with her is when someone is bursting her bubble a little bit. There's a part where Barristan pulls her aside and he goes, I want to talk to you about your father. And he goes, like, the Mad King. And she goes, you're going to tell me more about my enemy's lies? And he goes, they didn't lie. And he goes, your father was a monster. And he goes, he burned Ned Stark's. There's a. Did you ever watch the lore and history of Westeros on YouTube? Those little animatics where they tell you like a history lesson about something.
No, but I'm aware of
They're
lot of.
Really cool.
I know a lot about Robert's Rebellion and everything leading up to that. And
there's a really cool one where Richard Madden does Brandon Stark, Ned's older brother.
Yes,
and their father
Rickard Stark, and who were abducted and then.
They weren't abducted. They went to the capital to demand Rhaegar return Lyanna.
That's right.
And then he said, the Mad King said, this is a crime against my son. So, like, we'll treat this like a crime. And he goes, we will have a trial by combat. And then he goes, he chains up Rickard and says, you were the accuser, so you stand trial. And he goes, and so Rickard chooses his son as his champion for the trial by combat.
Brandon.
Aerys chooses fire as his champion.
Because And he
an insane
immolates
person
them.
who thinks that he's a dragon.
Right.
And he burns Rickard alive, and he puts a sword just out of reach from Brandon Stark, and he puts a chain around his neck, and he strangles himself to death trying to save his father.
Okay, that's
And that's sort of the thing that starts the war, essentially. And there's a part where he said, where Barristan tells her that story or whatever, or tells her like you're the madness of her father, and that if you're going to rule, you're going to have to show that you're going to be better than him. And there's a couple of moments where she has that humility, and that's where I do like her. There's a part where she meets Jon Snow for the first time, and he goes, "Last time I was here, like your father killed my grandfather and my great uncle and stuff." And she goes, "My father," and she gets like real angry with him, like she's gonna tell him to, and she goes, "Was an evil man." And he goes, "And I extend you my greatest apologies for it." And I was like, that's what you need to do.
That's also going back to the responsibility of the writers is to continue that evolution, because by the beginning of
but
the
to do it
last,
naturally, I think it's the best way you do it.
Instead of just railroading her into a tyrant,
Yeah,
which
so
just doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah, we'll get to the. I think we'll end this thing with we'll talk about the last season specifically.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about favorite characters. Beric Dondarrion is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Because I love the fact that he is and I hate the way they wrap up his arc. I think it's real dumb. Me and my friend Will, my cousin, had when we were speculating about the last season, and this just shows like a lack of imagination on the writer's part. Beric Dondarrion keeps getting brought back to life. Why? What's the end game here?
He believes it's because of the Lord of Light.
Well, it is.
It
Like,
is.
why does the Lord of Light keep bringing him back?
Right. And also, why does the Lord of Light do what they do?
And I said it would be really metal if they bring him back to kill the ice dragon. And he plunges a fiery sword, ice and fire. It fits with the theme. It will be real metal. And how does he die? He dies in I protected Arya. And I was like, whatever.
Yeah, you don't know this person.
But when I first meet him, he's really cool. And I love his band of outlaws. I love Thoros of Myr. And he's a guy who's talked about throughout the show is like Jorah Mormont talks about him with Barristan and Selmy when they fought against the rebellion of the Iron Islands, which was Robert's first war after he became king.
Right, because that's the Greyjoys pushed up into the north.
Yeah, and
that's why Theon ended up where he is.
Yeah, and when they bring back when they batter down the walls of Pike, he's the first one through the hole, and he lights his sword on fire when he fights because he's a priest of Myr. He's a priest of the Lord of Light.
Because that's the thing about Beric Dondarrion, and also about is they're the closest thing you get to kind of these paladins, like these religious fighters who are they're like true believers.
They're mostly noble. They do sell Gendry for money because they need money. But I genuinely like him, and I love. There's a great scene where Thoros talks about how when I came to Westeros, I didn't believe in the Lord of Light anymore. I would just drink and fuck, and that was my thing. And it's when he's talking to the Red Woman,
Melisandre,
comes, and he says, and then I met up with this one, and we went to go kill the Mountain because Ned Stark. We see him in the season 1 where he orders Beric Dondarrion to gather men at arms and to go bring Gregor Clegane, the king's justice. They changed the actor, but we do see him in season 1. And then as I met him, and the Mountain drove a lance through his heart, and I was sad because he was my friend. And he goes, so I said the words I would always say over funerals. He was not because I believed them, but because he was my friend, and they were the only words that I knew. And then he came back to life again. And he goes, and that's when I knew. And he goes, my God is real, and all men must serve him. And I was like, I thought that was fascinating because if you had the power to bring someone back to life, you would believe your religion.
Because so
which
much
is a theme throughout the show is Stannis says that to Davos, and he goes, you say you don't believe in her God, but when it's right there in front of you, how can you not believe? And I was like, that's the sort of middle ground of religion. Like George R. R. Martin is obviously a big atheist. You can tell him with moments when Davos talks about the gods. When he says Davos Seaworth is another one of my favorite characters.
I was gonna say off the bat, Davos Seaworth is
Liam
one
Cunningham,
of my favorite.
I think this is the actor's
Liam
name.
Cunningham kills it, makes that character so lovable.
And there's a part where he talks to Thanos, and he goes, I hated the idea of my son being afraid at night, about worrying that he was gonna die, and I wanted to tell him, you won't, child, you won't ever. And he goes, and I think that mothers and fathers made up the gods because they wanted their children to sleep through the night and stuff. And it's there's an ambivalence towards religion in this, but also an idea of but if you could bring a man back to life, you'd believe.
Well, that's Dondarrion and his writers and everything are one of the few situations where you're just like, yes, this is. I mean, because we're told that it's the Lord of Light. Melisandre, of course, talks about the Lord of Light. Jon Snow comes back and she says it's the Lord of Light.
Yeah.
Though in the end, we don't really know.
We don't get
because
a satisfying
no,
prophecy.
there's no
conclusion.
angel of the Lord of Light that comes down and says, "Yes, it was me,"
Yeah.
or one of the other gods.
We
or
just
if
have
it's
to assume.
We just have to assume. Yeah.
And I think it's a fair assumption. I'm like,
Well, their
he
magic
worship-
is real.
Yeah, he worships
Melisandre
the
is
god.
able to do what she does, and Bear Dondarrion is able to come back to life, and Jon Snow also came back to life.
Yeah.
For a reason, which
Yeah.
we never get to.
So I'll talk about another one of my favorites is I love a great redemptive character arc. I love the Hound.
Yeah.
It's really good. And I think I like him. There's some great moments where he takes the time to repent his sins. You remember the time where him and Arya get like housed by that farmer and his daughter, and they feed him, and he offers the Hound money to like help him bring in his crop and scare away any thieves, and he goes, I have some silver I could give you, fair wages for fair work, and the Hound agrees, and then tomorrow he steals the silver and like he punches the dad out or whatever and takes their money, and Arya's like you said you weren't a thief, and he goes, I wasn't, now I am, and he goes he's like, he's a weak man and his daughter's weak and they'll both be dead come winter, and she goes, and later, when he's with Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr, he goes back by that farmhouse and he sees that the dad killed the daughter
Yep.
to save her from freezing to death. And then he killed himself. And then he buries them and he says, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry you're dead. And he tries to christen their graves with like the Light of the Seven or whatever, but he can't remember the words.
Oh, I remember. It's just like,
I can't remember the words. He goes, I'm sorry you're dead. And like, I really like that about him. And I like that he beats the odds as far as like what he could have been.
and it takes its time, like
Yes.
because you know that
Unlike the Clegane.
that the Clegane brothers have been gilded in rage and killing and amorality.
That's the founding of their house, essentially.
And because of that, an arc for a character like the Hound is not going to be easy.
Yeah.
He's a killer of men. He's a killer of children.
He even says that the killing is the thing I love more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we meet him at the end, that started to change to the point where even in the last season, it's not something that I hate. It's one of the few things I like where he tells Arya, like, you don't want to be like me.
Yeah, that's a really good, like, because at that point,
And then we get that stupid Clegane fight that I hate. But
well, that's an interesting, because they did such a great job of you when you set off for these characters from the beginning, you're always like, interesting that those two characters of all the, it's almost like someone rolled the dice and said, Arya Stark is gonna be palled with the Hound. All right, we'll figure out how that works, and it ends up being this
well,
thing.
it
where,
is the chaos of war. I feel like
Yeah.
even if you did do it that way, I'd be like, that's
it's
as
like
good a way
Brienne and
as
Tarth
any.
with Jaime, but it kind of becomes this thing where as her humanity starts slowly seeping out into becoming an assassin, becoming something more than human.
Yeah.
He's like,
He's finding
don't
his.
lose your humanity. Don't
Yeah.
lose what made you you.
But that being said, whenever someone does something mean to the Hound, I'm always ready to see him kill like 6 or 7 people.
Yeah.
There's that bar fight where he eat the chickens fight or whatever, which is one of my favorite. It's a Tarantino standoff where he's like, he tells the dude, if any more words come pouring out of your cunt mouth, I'm gonna eat every fucking chicken in this room. And the guy says, you used to live your life for the king. It's like, now you're gonna die for some chickens? And he goes, someone is.
Someone
And
is.
then there's the big, like,
Someone is.
there's this hushed silence. And then I'm like, somebody hit somebody. And they're like, that is a great fight.
It's the bar scene in Inglourious Bastards.
It is,
waiting
yeah.
for the machine guns to come out.
Who are some of your favorite characters?
So you've already put Davos Seaworth,
Yeah.
who is the closest you get to just a decent regular fellow.
good man, yeah.
Just a good man with no great stakes in this combat. Just
He seems genuinely concerned with like fairness and
Mm-hmm.
justice, which is why he follows Stannis, because there's a lot of great scenes with him and Stannis where they talk about
and Stannis was another character better in the books that the show kind of just doesn't know what to do with by the midpoint, because they're like, we have our own
somewhere
arc.
around season 4 he gets a little boring. But
Yeah.
when I first meet him, I don't know if I like him, but I like that character a lot.
Well, a lot of people say, like, in terms of who is supposed to be king, it's like, well, I guess it's supposed to be Stannis Baratheon, because it was supposed to be Renly, and then Renly was assassinated,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like, But to watch his destruction as a character is kind of like, that's lame.
Yeah.
But he used to be one of my favorite characters until he just becomes a zealot who sacrifices everything for nothing.
Yeah.
But out of that, we get
And also, you get that great scene where Davos confronts Melisandre to Jon Snow about what she does, which is very much like the tail end of that. Of Stannis is already dead by this point.
Yeah.
But he's like, and she goes like, I did what my Lord of Light commanded, and he goes like, how many people had to die? And she goes, I thought that killing the girl would bring us victory in battle, and he goes, and you were wrong. And he goes, how many people had to die because you were wrong? And I was like, yeah. Because she's kind of an idiot.
Yeah.
And her conviction is not like it's not a virtuous thing that she has.
Well, she comes into the world as like, oh, she's the keeper of great power, but even by the end, she becomes questioning her own ability because she's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what my God wants.
Yeah.
I can only go by I'm assuming hundreds of years of instinct and faith and the powers that I possess. To be like, I don't know why you're here, Jon Snow, but you're here for a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, Davos, his arc is great.
He becomes one of the small council at the end.
Yeah,
He's
I'll get
master
to
of
that.
ships.
I'll get to the small council.
Which is almost a little too convenient because everyone on the small council is like, they're a good, smart, wise person, except Bronn, who just kills his way into it.
Yeah.
That's another one I don't like. I don't like Bronn.
You don't like Bronn to the Blackwater?
Because he's just a murderer.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to think he's funny and charming, but
He's
like
just a dick.
he literally implies like, I would kill a child if you paid me enough, a baby if you paid me enough money. I'm
Right.
like, I don't like him.
Yeah, he's just a mercenary scumbag.
Yeah.
And the show gives him moments of going above his greed, which is nice. Again, a lot of it has to do with the cast. Everyone was
Jerome
cast
Flint's
so well.
fine. Like, I don't think he's a bad actor, and I just
couldn't do any scenes with Lena Headey because they had this relationship that was a disaster.
Oh, did they?
Did you know about that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, Jerome Flynn and Lena Headey used to be dating, and they had a horrible relationship, and it had a terrible fallout, and they didn't do any scenes together.
Oh, probably for the best.
Yeah, that's why, like, in the last season, what's his name?
Also, he's useless in the last season. Shows up twice
and magically
to blackmail somebody.
Yeah, for no reason, and then wins in the end. He gets Highgarden.
He gets Highgarden and is like master of
coin
or something,
which has always gone to the most wonderful characters, of course.
Yeah, but Davos Seaworth, a smuggler, becomes master of ships and stuff. I appreciated that.
Well, he earns his way up in ranks. You know, he's there for the battles. He is the
kind of guy that you would want as your hand of the king. Tyrion, I think, becomes hand again or something. But yeah, so like, who's some more people you like?
So, off the bat, I
guess Jon Snow.
Well, Jon is great. I'm one of the rare Theon stans.
I like Theon.
A lot of people, when the show is going on, did their list of like the worst characters, and they're like, Theon is the most despicable character, and I'm like, I don't know. I have a sympathy for him. I have a sympathy for him being stuck where he is,
horribly mutilated.
Well, even before that, even when he is the black sheep, forgotten child of a highly patriarchal, hyper-masculine society that sees him as weak.
Even double black sheep by moving to like another. They sell him off to another. They don't sell him, but like he goes to another family.
And it is agreed that his desire to be recognized, his desire to be seen as something more than what fate has given him, leads him to doing the most horrible thing, which is turning against the family that took him in.
Yeah,
based on his own hatred and his own anger. But
there's a great scene where he talks to.
He's an abuse victim of a society that hates men like him.
Yeah.
And then therefore when he tries to be a man like them, he ends up betraying good people.
And they just turn him in.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, there's no.
And then he's punished horribly.
Yeah.
And he's punished horribly for it. That's one thing is, by the end, his death, I was like, I'm glad that he gets a moment where even Bran is just like,
me too. And
thank you.
Bran just literally tells him, "You're a good man.
You're a good man."
And I was like, that's what he needed to hear.
Yeah.
He definitely dies like I guess like. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to
with
that
the last season.
But
there's a great scene with him and Ramsay when Ramsay's pretending to set him free or whatever.
Yeah, when he's still doing the reek thing.
Yeah, and no, where he's pretending to set Theon free to lead him back to the Dreadfort.
Which
is
sucks.
real fucked up. But
that sucks.
Yeah, and there's a part where he says, "My real father got his head cut off in King's Landing," and I was like, I really like that. And they play the Stark theme underneath it, and like he wants to be a Stark essentially. He wanted to be one of those noble people
Because the Greyjoys would never accept him.
Yeah,
Never.
And there's a part where he talks to John about it, about like he felt he was pushed between two worlds, and John tells him, and he goes, "I've done a lot of things I regret," and he goes, "I can't forgive you for everything, but what I can forgive, I do." And I was like, I really like. He doesn't get a lot of moments like that, but like when he does get those moments, I really like him, and I kind of like I greatly sympathize with him.
Yeah.
I felt
lot
a sense of closure with him when he got that thing from Bran.
And it also is just like I feel like a lot of the hate Theon gets is audience projection of masculinity.
Yeah.
Because he's a coward. And he's a vulnerable coward, but he's also a horrific abuse victim who is mutilated and destroyed far beyond anybody else gets.
Yeah.
By another character I really enjoy, which is Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah.
Because it's just a fun character. He's a horrible, 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 unhuman monster. But it's kind of refreshing to see a character who isn't bound by honor, that is just, I'm a psychopath. I'm a murdering, horrible psychopath.
Yeah.
And
he's great at chewing the scenes, for sure.
Yeah, Ewan Rowan he becomes one of my favorite actors in
I
it.
also love watching him die. It's real good.
Yeah, well, the Battle of the Bastards is one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, he hams it up, and it's just nice that we go from characters like Tywin and all these other characters who are bound by regality but are also brutal to someone's like, I'm just the Joker.
Yeah.
I'm just an evil person, and evil people win in this world, and no one can get one beyond me. But seeing John destroy his face.
No, I meant when Sansa.
Six of dogs on him. Oh,
him.
wonderful.
I was like,
that's my dogs will never betray me. He's like, you haven't
fed them in days. We'll see how loyal they are. That's a Joker line. We'll see how loyal a hungry dog really is, or whatever.
And then he gets his face eaten.
Yeah, I was like, you deserve this.
What about you? Wrap up for favorite characters. It's like Ramsay's not a favorite character of mine. It's just I like the presence he adds into the show.
I agree. It's another really good character. I like, again, like there's a couple of characters that I like, and then I just lose interest in after a while. Like Tyrion, seasons 2 and 3, and until he goes overseas, I really like him, and he's interesting. And like watching him navigate these people, watching him talk shit to Joffrey's face every day, is a lot of fun. And then it just like he kind of like noble people giving advice to other noble people by its nature is kind of boring.
Yeah.
Which is what happens with him. But I like him, and I think he's very funny. He gets good, quippy dialogue, but after a while, it's wasted on him.
Well, that's the thing that Lindsay Ellis says in this video is Tyrion becomes the worst thing he could possibly be, which is boring.
Yeah.
Tyrion is much more interesting when he has
some degree of power.
Yeah.
Which he does. I mean, he becomes her hand.
Right. But even then, like you said, the Daenerys tractor beam essentially...
Same thing with Varys.
Annihilates all power and agency for every character who is just essentially simping for her.
Yeah. I love Varys as a character. He's very different in the books. In the books, it is implied, and at the end of the 5th book, they heavily imply he is very sinister and he has bad motives. In the show, they make him a man who I want good leadership, and I want good governance, and I will do whatever I have to and betray whoever I have to get the person who I think will do the best amount of good on the throne.
Well, talking about that, I want to take a moment, and then I'll talk about my favorite Stark. But I think about Peter Baelish, and Peter Baelish's arc I felt would have been, talk about sinister motives. I don't like Peter Baelish. I don't like Littlefinger.
You're not supposed to.
I love his trajectory, and I feel like he thematically should have been a greater power than he was. Because what I've imagined the whole thing of Peter Baelish is he's a character who is, I have been fucked over by the powers that be and have kind of walked my way into positions of power and essentially become somebody who maneuvers everything in a way that will disseminate and destroy Westeros as it is.
Yeah.
From the inside, an agent of chaos who's like, this was my plan all along.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's where they were going with it. It was just like, I'm setting up everything to get revenge against Westeros aristocracy for what they did to me.
Yeah, but
and they just
Yeah,
They just don't do it.
but he's also like not that clever. I think he is less clever than people think he is. How does he get like power over the Knights of the Vale? He marries their aunt and then he kills her.
Right.
Oh, you genius! like that's like that's,
That old chestnut.
yeah, like that's not that clever. And like he gets Harrenhal, but he gets like it's not. Nobody does anything other than what he does to get power. Like Janos Slynt, the commander of the City Watch, like he betrays Ned Stark and he's gifted Harrenhal.
Right.
And then Tyrion sends him to the wall because, well, you betrayed the last hand, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with you lurking about. So you're gone.
You're gone,
And
yeah.
then they give Peter Baelish like stuff because he betrayed Ned Stark too. And then after they win the Battle of the Blackwater, they give him some more stuff for loyalty to. They're just rewarding ass licking.
Well,
which is not
it's
that
failing
clever.
upwards.
Yeah.
It's which a lot of characters do is fail
Yeah,
upwards,
but he's
except for Danny.
Yeah, he's never that clever, except for the fact that you don't ever know exactly what he wants.
Well,
And I
that's why I've
and
always
that's
thought
by-
that what he wants, other than
He wants, like he says, everything.
Right.
And I think like he doesn't want his enemies to know what he thinks, and he doesn't want them to be able to predict him. And because he's always sort of testing the terrain. Like if he was smarter, there would have been a part where he moved over to the Lannisters with the Knights of the Vale and just shored up that. But I think he doesn't, like he says, I don't want unpredictable enemies. I don't want friends like me. I want friends that are predictable and safe and like that I can understand easily.
which one could argue that's what he underestimated Sansa, who has underestimated everybody as she has developed court understanding through watching Joffrey, through watching Cersei, through watching the Tyrells, and then comes out more cunning than him.
Yeah. And I think that like her being more cunning than him by itself isn't even that interesting. Like she gets the drop on him essentially by like he thinks she's going to accuse Arya and then
Right.
she just accuses him. But
and he
also
ends up begging for his life, and it's like, oh,
but also
okay.
why doesn't he be like I demand trial by combat and I demand a champion, like I'm Lord of the Vale and I demand a champion. He doesn't like he's not clever. Like
Well, they don't. Well, again, they don't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
they drop him off, and as I wanted I think for me, I wanted a moment like if he was about to be killed to say, I succeeded in everything I wanted to do. I ended up destroying the status quo of this land. I got my revenge,
Yeah.
and you can kill me.
he just kind of whines.
And instead, he's just like,
begs.
no, you're like Cat.
Yeah.
No, and it's like, I know he's a jerk, but I wanted his goals, at least what I saw of it, of
come to better
dismantling this society that failed him, is much more satisfying. And because he is like, my machinations have helped undo this land. I win.
Yeah.
I may die, but my legacy will live on.
Yeah.
Instead, he doesn't say that. It's just more suggested.
Yeah.
So talking about the Starks, Arya Stark is my favorite.
Yeah, she's pretty good.
Her arc is wonderful. To go from where she is to having this really interesting adventure.
She feeds Walder Frey his sons in a pie.
Yeah.
Very much like Titus
Andronicus, yeah. And her abilities and her triumphs and her failures and everything leading up to where she ends up really is disappointing in that last season, because one of the things they do to her is they deflate a lot of her personality, much like they do with Sansa. Sansa stops being anything but cold. And
Yeah.
it's like and the show doesn't dote on the idea that becoming a cold, calculating person is the tragedy of political intrigue. Instead, it's seen as empowerment, and that sucks.
Yeah, it kind of is.
That-
It's also kind of boring.
Yeah,
in
it's
a way.
boring
Yeah.
because Sansa starts as this character you don't like, who's just like this bratty.
And then she becomes a tragedy, and then
Yeah.
she becomes kind of like all the people she hates.
right, which is sad,
Yeah.
but it's not treated as sad.
But
It's
you know, she's
but-
not mean. Like when she gets
No.
that power, she uses it like more like her father would have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a shame to see her drugged down into those kind of depths.
But that's Sansa's thing.
Yeah.
Arya.
Hers is empowerment.
Yes,
she,
hers
she
is-
gets to do what she wants to do, and she gets to do it sort of her way. And she has to go through some like pretty awful stuff to get there. There is a part of me that kind of wanted them to not let her go overseas, just hang around with the Hound and learn how to fight from him.
Hmm. Right.
But
she's got to go to ninja school.
yeah,
which is cool.
Fun.
Some of it's not so great. Some of it's too.
some of it's sitting
convoluted.
around in a boring dark room watching a body for some reason. But like,
Because
I
that's
get it.
another thing that's not explained is the power of the faceless men and all that. And I think that's okay. It's an unknowable mysticism.
Yeah, you don't need
everything
to explain
else has a
everything.
god. The many-faced god,
Yeah.
but they don't need to explain it. But I would have liked there to be a little more with that, and I would have liked her to, because we all thought like she's going to use that power to get one last thing done, like that ability to make herself into somebody else is going to lead to. No, it doesn't. She kills the Night King, which doesn't seem appropriate, but whatever.
Yeah. And then she kills Walder Frey with it.
Right.
Which is kind of cool. And I like that after she kills him, she looks at his 9 millionth child bride and says, tell them what happened here. And he goes, tell them that winter came for House Frey. And I was like, that's a good line.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good lines in this show. Lots of great writing. For all David Benioff and DB Weiss's failing. They are some good writers, and they do good for a lot of this show. Let's get to the last season. Let's trace it.
You don't
and
have any
find our
Starks to
problems.
talk about or any last
I like
character?
all of them.
Yeah.
I like not John Stark, Robb Stark.
Yeah.
I felt great tragedy when he dies because he was just about to attack like Lannisport or Casterly Rock and stuff,
And then
be like,
the Boltons betrayed them
Yeah.
for House Frey and everything. And
the
the Red Wedding is the big infamous moment that shocked everybody and is more gruesome in the book. And
I mean, I think it's about as gruesome as it is. I've read it in the book.
The
and I
Reigns of
think
Castamere.
I think it's about the same. But I even like him. I like. I don't like this sort of teeter-totter of like people who are noble can never find a middle ground of like what to do with their enemies. Like the Karstarks leave Robb's army because Jaime Lannister kills his sons.
Yeah.
And then he kills the 2 Lannister hostages they find, and Robb kills him for that.
Right.
Like the moment Jaime Lannister, if I'm Robb Stark, the moment Jaime Lannister like kills his cousin to lure the guy in so he can kill him and break free and get a sword, I would have cut his hands off. I'd be like, I'll keep you alive, but you're never touching a sword again.
Yeah. You are a dangerous thing with a weapon.
Yeah.
And we don't need you.
Or I'd make him sleep with my direwolf or something. Like I would put the fear of God in that man.
Right. But
like,
you wouldn't execute him because that's going to cause big trouble.
Yeah, you can't execute him, and that's one of the things about her, like his mom, that I'm just so frustrated with. Is like,
With
why
Catelyn
would
Stark?
you? Yeah, why would you do that? Why would if you give the Lannisters exactly what they want, why would they ever release Sansa to you?
Well, that's
They
another
have
thing that the
no need
books
to
do
now.
with Cat Stark is Cat Stark is such an interesting character from the beginning because she's not presented as just a humble woman wife.
She's proud. And
she's proud and
to a
she's
fault,
she's
almost.
proud to a fault. She's suspicious.
She's mean to Jon Snow. Tells him that he should have died instead of Bran.
Well,
I remember reading that in the first opening pages of the book.
She
I was
thinks
like, ugh,
she
God.
thinks and sadly wrongly that he is the bastard of her husband and he's not.
And there's a great scene where she's talking to Robb's new bride about she brought death on her family because she wished Jon Snow's death, and then Jon got real sick with like a terrible pox, and she stayed with him all night. And she said, "God, if you keep him alive, I'll love him and I'll be a mother to him and I'll be there for him." And then he lived.
And she
didn't do it.
She
And
still
as
felt that bitterness towards him.
Yeah, but I like that she acknowledges moments like that is what saves it for me for her, because otherwise I'm like, she's just a stupid character who doesn't think things through. I think she's just desperate and she loves her family.
Right.
Is what it is.
and then when tragedy befalls her family. Well, that's what I mean. Do you think the books would have been? I mean, the show would be better.
The books keep her alive.
Well,
because Beric Dondarrion gives his life to bring her back.
Right, but do you think the series would have been interesting if Lady Stoneheart had been there?
No, I think they may have made the right choice.
Yeah, because that's almost a bridge too far.
Because we don't
for a
know where she
series.
goes yet. We're still at book 5, and we don't know what she does.
We know
she
she's
captures Brienne.
ravaging Freyland right now and is and is hanging people by the dozen.
Yeah.
But in the show, she passes. She
Yeah.
does.
So
the
yeah,
last season.
I like all the Starks. I like
too.
Ned. Ned's great.
Poor
Sean-
Rickon. Poor Rickon.
Yeah, that's
Gets
awful.
he does not have an arc really.
I like Bran until he becomes Three-Eyed Raven, and then he's a big snooze fest, kind of. Like I like that. Like I like the idea of like great power, but they don't explain what his powers are well enough. And
what the children of the forest are. Who when he meets with
the Three-Eyed Raven, Max von Sydow, and
Yeah.
stuff. And like I
well, and also the two siblings,
Jojen and Mira.
Jojen Reed, the Reeds, yeah.
And I just felt like him getting this power should mean something more than it is, and it wasn't explained well enough. I don't even understand the Hodor scene fully. Like I think I get what it is in principle.
I get it. I get what
Like,
they were, because he is a character out of time.
Like Bran used his powers now to inadvertently go back and make Hodor.
Into Hodor.
Yeah, and have the knowledge of one day you're gonna have to keep this door closed no matter what happens, and like it's noble, but I didn't quite understand how or why it happens and stuff.
Well, with his name being that, we know that that's Martin's plan.
Yeah.
Like it's like that's what Martin is going to do when we get to Winds of Winter.
Yeah.
So it's like he had this from the very beginning. This is what was up.
All right, so let's start with the last season.
Let's start with the last season. What happened to this series that we love so much?
Yeah. We discovered that Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, which is something the fans had predicted way before the show.
He's Aegon Targaryen, right?
I think so. Yeah.
He's Aegon Targaryen.
Because they name him after the first Targaryen.
Mm-hmm.
In the books, I think there's another Targaryen.
There's a
who's alive.
pretender to the throne that claims to be the real Aegon Targaryen, and that's who Tyrion's going to go find.
Yeah.
But that's not in the show.
No.
So
Which is probably good because you have enough characters.
But it's built up to that is like Jon Snow came back for a reason. He is somebody of significance, not just to this world, but to the worlds beyond.
Yes.
What that is, we don't know.
He falls in love with Dany. They have an incestuous relationship,
Yeah,
which I feel genuinely bad about. I feel bad when they figure that out because I genuinely, and this is one of the things I'll praise the last season for, I like the building, not just the last season, because I guess it's season 6 or 7. Season 7 when they meet. Yeah, they meet in season 7, and they slowly form like a more nice relationship together. And she comes to rescue him in the north, which I thought was really cool. And they fall in love with each other. And doomed love is not like it's very old hack for George R.R. Martin. He's been using this theme in a lot of his books since his first book, like doomed love and doomed relationships and stuff. Like he does it with Tyrion and Shay and stuff as well. I actually really liked them getting together, and when they found out they're related and stuff, I was very much like, oh man, you poor guys. Like, so we get to the last season. They're gearing up to fight the White Walkers who have broken through the wall,
which has been literally the big existential threat since the first scene of the series.
Yeah,
like the first 10 minutes.
Yeah,
5 minutes even.
One could even argue the White Walkers took way too long getting down here,
but by doing that, you're thematically building them as the final threat.
Yeah,
and that's not what happens.
Yeah, in the season 7, they go to King's Landing with Cersei, and they show her what's coming, which is like a dead corpse monster.
They show him one of the whites. They're
also,
in that.
Daenerys shows up at the meeting on the back of a giant dragon, just to I had to
flex.
make an entrance.
Yeah, just to flex, just
to let you know you're nothing to me, and I could destroy you all. It's like, and then Cersei, for some reason, and Cersei Lannister might be another one of those characters they don't know what to do with by the end, where like she just decides, okay, we'll fight with you after Tyrion convinces her, and then she goes,
like, I'm just gonna wait till they all die.
I'm gonna wait till they all die, and Jaime very perfectly illustrates to her like, so these are the two options that happen. They ride north, they defeat the dead, they come south and they kill us all. They go north, they fight the dead win, they come south and kill us all.
Or that halfway point that she wanted, which is like they'll defeat the dead, some of them are left, and we'll kill them before they can even get there.
Yeah.
And it's like that does check out for where Cersei ends up, because even though we know her as a wicked person from the beginning, she does have these tragedies. She loses everything, and it sucks for her. And we see what she goes through and the vengeance she takes. And it's like, she's now going to be cunning and all powerful, but this fight with her should have been first.
I think so as well.
To vaporize the White Walker threat, which has been winter is coming. This is the point to going back to very substandard politics is just like B is just come before A.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I feel like it undercuts the idea that if Dany, like they defeat Cersei somehow and then they defeat the White Walkers and then Dany has to rule. And if we're going to go down the route of Dany will become the Mad King's daughter, essentially.
Then you've got that open to show for.
And then you watch her be a bad ruler in Westeros and not know what she's doing, and then the machinations against her feel more correct and feel more vindicated.
Because even if, like, say the sacking of King's Landing took place in episode 4 or something like that, and it played out the same way it does, impossibly that she goes mad and destroys the city, which makes no sense. I'm sorry, there's no leading up to that whatsoever. The writers will say it's because she heard the bells and the Red Keep made her angry. She was too young to know what any of that was. That doesn't make any sense. Even if that still happened and Cersei was dead and it was all over, now you've created some tension where they still need to rely on her to defeat the Night King. It's like, now what's the greatest threat? This monstrous person or this monstrous person? Because now we've seen what she's capable of within humanity versus something that literally is not humanity. But they don't do that. Again, the big problem with the season finale is we end up in fan fiction mode, where we're digging
Writing
up the corpse
script in our heads.
We dig up the corpse of this last season and say, here's what would have happened. And the sad thing is, it didn't.
I think that we don't have to talk about the first 2 episodes, because I think what we're really waiting for, it's a lot of talking, and then the Battle of Winterfell happens.
Right. Well, we get a lot of the enjoyment of these, particularly the living Starks coming back together.
Yes.
The family is reconvened. It's stuff that made me tear up to see, like Arya and Jon.
Jon is told of his heritage and stuff.
Which I wish came out to more, but it didn't.
Yeah.
No, it is not as earth-shattering as it should have been.
And you'd want to get like a sense of catharsis from him. Like, I've wanted to know this forever. Do you think maybe it's because he's not a Stark and he wanted to be Ned's son? Could that be it?
Well, it's the thing that the show constantly presses, is that the best leaders are the ones who don't want it, because he's constantly like, I don't want to be king. I don't want to be king. I know I'm the rightful ruler. I know I'm Aegon Targaryen, but I don't want this. And he's more than willing to say, give it to Dany. I do legitimately bend my knee to her, begrudgingly, but I do, and also because I love her. But I mean, what they do with him at the end is just kind of. I think his exile, like what they end up doing with him, is like, oh, he's going to go be the king of the North, essentially. I was like, actually, that checks out, given him and his relationship with.
Back to the Night's Watch,
right? But there is no Night's Watch anymore, so I'm assuming he's going to become the new Mance Rayder. And given his relationship with Mance, I'm like, that checks out. Like, I don't think he ever really fraternized or connected with someone like he did with Mance. And it was like, these are my people, but they never. He never has that moment where he's like, I liberated the wildlings. I liberated the North into the wildlings. Like, that racism is gone now, mostly because of all the old racist leaders are dead. And all of the Stark bannermen are all gone, essentially, too. And he's like, I'm going to become king of the North.
I think you have to come up with a really good reason why Dany starts to lose faith. And I think the idea of that nobody likes her is not good enough.
There's a lot of push by all these characters that just like are side-eyeing her the whole time. And logistically, it doesn't make sense. Like, Sansa's hate for her feels so like she read the script in advance and she knows she's going to betray her or betray everybody. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
And there's a scene where she's with Jon and like she tries to kiss him and Jon doesn't really kiss her back or whatever, and she's like, and she goes, no, it's like, everybody fears me, like nobody loves me. And I was like, I think there's something there that could have blossomed and turned into like a real arc. I don't think that's executed nearly as well as they think it is.
No, because they prove.
Because then she just goes like, once she's after that, she just goes to like, fear it is then, or something like that. And I was like, that's not earned. The fear part right there isn't earned. Like, her turn, like, well, no one loves me, so I guess I'm just gonna be mean.
It's like a character that's trying to roll for in a D&D game for like personality traits and just rolls ones and ones and ones. And so the GM's just like, I guess you're just gonna be a bad person.
No charisma.
No charisma.
All the charisma you had before this is gone.
You
somehow.
are the Mad Queen. Why not? Essentially, it's proving all these characters who are unrightfully naysayers right. They're all like, we were right about her, and therefore the audience is being told you were wrong about her, and it's like,
and I also think
stupid.
that like
that
the smarter
sucks.
thing to do is like, if you're Tyrion and Jon and Varys, and you believe in like good counsel will give good leadership and stuff, and she gets rid of the murderer like sellsword Dario on her council, which is probably a good idea because he shouldn't be on your council when you go over there. like if you were Tyrion, if you want to be logical, because these are logical people, and Dany, for all her faults, and I do think she has faults, is not illogical.
No.
You would just be like, okay.
Because she's been
she has-
successful so
she
far.
has-
She's failed several times, but
has-
she's
yeah,
won.
She has problems. You'd be like, the best thing we can do is we put her on the throne and we be supportive and we give her great leadership and we believe in her and we make sure that she knows that we love her and we care about her.
And that thematically works because Dany becomes powerful through the influence of the people around her, and it makes her unstableness more stable.
Yeah, and also everyone who comes into contact with her does love her.
Right.
So like
She's the simp queen.
except Ferris. Or
right.
whatever.
Everyone simps for her.
Yeah.
And
So I'm like, that would make more sense. And Jon being like, I'm not going to betray her after I swore my fealty. And for everyone else to kind of like start doing that I don't think that's a good idea either. I also don't think people like Missandei are powerful enough enablers to make her like when they kill Missandei at King's Landing or whatever. And I was like, first of all, if you're Cersei Lannister, you're really not smart. And I think it suffers from her. The arrogance of her is such a glaring character flaw that it's not real to me.
no.
I don't feel like anyone will be smart enough to be like, I'm gonna kill this person who is essentially just like a servant.
Right.
She's not a great advisor.
She's not
she
the hand.
translates and
right.
stuff.
But
And, like-
it's because it's like this is someone who's intimately close to you. But Cersei doesn't really know that either.
Yeah.
And she's just like, all right, I'm just going to do this. And then that's another mark on the I'm going to burn the whole place down because you took my stapler moment for Dany. It's just like, yeah, you're right. This is the last straw.
And I think that's not a good reasoning for Dany to go haywire. Let's talk about the Battle of Winterfell because there's some stuff in here I want to talk about.
There's a lot I like in it.
Yes,
But there's also a lot I don't like in it. But
there's the part where all the Dothraki get killed and they're back in the next episode.
yeah, they're like, this is the end of the Dothraki. No, there's not. There's plenty.
Yeah, they're in the. I think they want us to think that, and then we just see them in the next episode. So it's like they don't really commit to any of these ideas.
Also, I'll come back to the presentation of the Dothraki and what's the army that the
Unsullied.
the Unsullied are how they're presented is really problematic and weird. But we'll get to that during the sacking of King's Landing.
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of great visuals in this fight. It's the big battle we've all been waiting for.
There are parts of it that I think are genuinely like, that's real metal.
Well,
the part where Melisandre lights their swords on fire, I was like, that's dope.
Yep. That and it's like everybody's kind of coming together. We've got all these legions that are coming in, and
Not
everyone's
nearly enough.
not nearly
Even
enough.
when I was looking, I was like, that's like what, 20,000 soldiers? That's not enough. I
Yeah,
was like,
this is an army of millions.
that's like or millions at least. And it's like the fight of Minas Tirith. Like it's 200,000 orcs versus like a few thousand soldiers inside. And I'm like, it's not enough. It's the same scale.
It
for
would
me.
be totally and
Now their tactics and they have dragons and trenches and stuff that could help them, but like it's just a wave of when the
of disposable
yes.
creatures
And when the
as opposed to
when the
humans that are not
Dothraki-
disposable.
When the Dothraki come right up against the wall of the dead, it's just it's like World War Z where they're
Yeah.
crawling over each
It's
other.
a wall.
And they just fall on them.
Right. And
I was
you
like-
watch the lights go out. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's the end.
Yeah.
That's it. First wave gone.
And that would have been more dramatic if you just commit to killing the Dothraki.
Yeah.
Also, hard to see episode.
Yeah, that's
I
a
know
big question
meme, but,
everybody
like,
had is like, I can't see anything in this. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, that hypes up some of the worry, some of the fear, some of the anxiety. Because once they finally get into King's Land, they get into Winterfell proper, that's when you start getting some of the independent little story arcs. Again, Arya has this great little sneaking around.
That's good.
That's a great moment.
We don't get Beric killing the ice dragon, which
Nope.
would have been dope,
Which
or
would've been
Jon
good.
killing the ice dragon.
Nope.
There's a part where Jon just screams in its face.
He's
like
about
he
to
knows
die
it.
from it. He's
He
about to
knows-
let himself die, and then it just
Yeah, it just
it
dies.
just dies. Because for some reason, when the Night King dies, everyone else drops.
Phantom Menace style.
Yeah.
That's a movie and TV trope I'm real tired of.
Yeah, is
Like-
once the donut
And
ship
the
is
genius
destroyed.
of the Night King is that he knows even if they fight the good fight, like all he has to do is just
Raise.
They all come right
Right.
back up.
Yep.
So like the only way to win is to kill him. Even because that way, even if you lose the fight, the dead can't come. No more dead
Right.
can come back.
The necromancer is finished. His armies cannot raise, but that doesn't mean once he's dead, his armies all die immediately.
Yeah. That there might still be a huge dead army you have to kill.
Right,
that's
but they're not gonna
aimless,
come
but That's
back.
easier to kill than. And I think the Night King is a really cool visual. I
Yeah.
like that he doesn't ever say anything. He just looks at you stoically. He has what I call the checklist of making a cool, dope bad guy. He has a team of your favorite thing from anime, a team of dudes
of also guys
kind of like
him.
Yeah, he never.
They don't
says
have a
any-
lot of uniqueness. They're just kind of other. They're kind of like the white. They're kind of like the ring wraiths. They're just old kings
Yeah,
who are now.
they each have a different kind of sword, but they all look the same.
They all look the same. Some have longer hair than others. Some have beards.
And I like that. What's the rest of the checklist? He never says anything, or he says very few. He's got a cool weapon, that ice spear that he has, and he kills the dragon with. That was dope.
That
by
was
the way.
cool.
Also, like, what was that? There was one more thing that I had. Yeah, there's a great clip of George R.R. Martin talking about how, like, I don't like in fantasy when, like, the bad guy is just evil because he's evil, and they have to give him a name like the Dark Lord or something. And I'm like, Knight, Dark, Lord, King.
The Night
did
King.
the same thing.
Yeah.
So
and also,
you're a liar,
he's an
Martin.
implaceable force.
Yeah.
That is something I wish, because everyone was like, who is the Night King? Like, people thought that he was this, he was that he's.
So he's what he is in the show, and they may not get to this or whatever. And we don't meet him till like season 4, so he's been around doing something, I imagine.
building his army.
Yeah, he's a man that the children of the forest found.
Yes.
And they put a thing in him that made him their weapon to fight against the first men.
Right.
And he's just doing his program.
Who he is doesn't matter, but he is a programmed killer.
Essentially.
Yeah. But now he's gone rogue and is just like.
Well, no, he's fulfilling his duties.
Right.
Like, my duty is to kill the men, but he also kills the
He also kills the children of the
forest.
forest.
Yeah, he does go rogue, doesn't he? And he kills the three-eyed raven? What's the beef there?
Yeah.
That's not explained.
Yeah, because he's like, I got it out. Because once Bran becomes a three-eyed raven, he's like, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, and like when he sees the first three-eyed raven, and when he kills him and he disintegrates in Bran's dreams, like he just looks at him like this is a long time coming for me and you, buddy.
Yeah.
There's like venom there, like with that state. I mean, I guess he always looks like he has venom for everybody, but
But this is personal.
yeah, and I was like, that's not explained. And like, I hate to be the guy who's like, you got to explain things in this nonsense world of dragons and magic and whatever. But it would make me like it more.
Yeah.
And
If it's for the actor, like if the actor playing it is like, my subtext is, I have this beef with this character for the centuries, for every version of him that has existed.
yeah.
But it needs to be text as well,
Yeah.
because it's like, I need to know who. I don't, even if this guy isn't anybody other than the Night King, it's like, why the three-eyed raven? Because there are people like, oh, he's Bran. Like he's Bran from another time. Like Bran went back and became the Night King and all that.
I know who the three-eyed raven is. Like in Game of Thrones lore, he's Daemon Blackfire, who is a former hand of the king to a previous Targaryen a couple hundred years ago, and then he goes to the Night's Watch, and then when he goes to the Night's Watch, he goes north of the Wall on a party, and he gets separated, and then he stays up there for forever, and he finds like that great heart tree or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's when he becomes the three-eyed raven. Because the thing about Daemon Blackfire is he had two eyes, but one of them was blood red from some disease or whatever. He was albino and he had long, very pale skin, and as the hand of the king, he had lots of spies and whisperers. And he said, whenever you talked about Daemon Blackfire, it was how many eyes does Daemon Blackfire has? 1,000, and it was like 1,001 because of that one red eye.
Because of one red eye.
That's what he says when he meets Bran. So I was like, that's not ever touched upon at all. It's like, it's who he is. He just says like, I was a man and now I'm here. I feel like that
Because there had to have been some or some kind of originating for the first creature that was the three-eyed raven.
Yeah, and as to like, why do the children of the forest serve him? What is his end game? He teaches Bran how to look into the past and the future,
Which is an incredible power.
Yeah.
It's the greatest power.
Yeah.
Because no one can keep secrets from him.
Yeah.
They said there was a cut sequence in the things leading up to the death of Peter Baelish, where Sansa goes to Bran and is just like, I want to know what's going on. And he's able to say, oh, I'll tell you what it is because I know everything now.
Yeah.
And that's how she's like, the only way I can beat him is to deceive him. But that scene's cut.
Yeah.
That scene's cut entirely.
And there was also the part where Peter Baelish talks to him and he's like, chaos is, and then Bran cuts him off. He goes, a ladder.
Yeah.
Like he knows that.
He
knows things, but that's never really explained or used well enough.
Well, it's also that like you question how much of his desire is to do anything because he becomes implaceable. He has no emotional connection. Anything.
Yeah, he
He's
tells
like,
Mira, like,
I'm not a human anymore.
I'm not Bran. Not really.
Yeah.
He says. So like that's not explained. Why would he want to be king at the end? Like why does he? I guess because he knows the future and that he will be king. But how do you it takes his agency out of it?
Yeah.
Like I will be king because the thing says so. Like,
yeah, the omnipotence is in
the
place.
script I read says so.
The script it tells me so.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the battle, and then we'll get to the second part of the season.
Well, who do you feel is the one that should have slayed the Night King thematically? Who feels the most appropriate?
If we're going thematically,
I don't hate that Arya does it, but it's cheap.
I did clap, but I was like, one, he goes out like a real bitch. Two, like there's the part in like he brings down a dragon, but a girl with a little hand knife move gets him. Like,
Yeah.
Come on, man.
It's a little because he's not a character that can become exhausted.
Yeah. There's a part where he walks up to the Three-Eyed Raven's house or whatever in the north, and there's like this fire. He just walks through, and the fire separates for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you got to do something better than that. Now, if we're going thematically, Screenwriting 101 says if you're doing a fantasy world and you have prophecies, you have to fulfill your prophecies because that's what prophecies are.
Right.
You don't get to bring Jon Snow back and then not do anything with
Unless you purposely bring up that you're subverting the prophecy. You have to detail it. If you're going to subvert the prophecy, there has to be not an explanation, but at least say you broke it.
The plot
you broke fate.
Yeah. So like thematically,
So they don't
it would
do
be Jon or Beric because they're being kept alive for something.
Right.
Which is why I said, well, obviously Beric is just like I almost like the idea that this is just me like jerking off my own favorite characters or whatever at this point, but I like the idea that Beric would kill the Ice Dragon or kill the Night King because he's no one. He's nobody.
He's nobody.
The only thing he's kept alive for is because some stern sense of justice to finish out Ned Stark's last orders.
And also, he won't die.
Yeah, and he won't die, so he'd be
He's
like
been split in half, came back.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, he did. The count
Cleaved him down the middle. He still came
he's been
back.
killed like 6-7 times. That to me would be cool. Like they have a fight and maybe right as he's about to die or something, like he does some sort of Terminator 2 style sacrifice where like, or you could even like do Excalibur where like the Night King stabs him through with this thing and he thinks he's gonna die because he doesn't know about the Lord of Light, and then he just grabs it, pulls him on, and makes him not able to walk away and just guts him.
Or it could be like kind of like in the I just think because I rewatched The Matrix recently. I was thinking about Matrix Revolution.
The third one,
yeah, where Smith turns Neo into a Smith, but it destroys the system.
Yeah,
and like he stabs him and he starts turning into a white, but then it corrupts the system because he's an uncorruptible
because the Lord of
character.
Light is the Lord of Fire, and it's like the opposite.
So
he
like
burns
all
out.
of a sudden he catches on fire, and that would justify the whole army catching on fire because he's now been penetrated with the Lord of Light.
Yeah, like that's a cool idea to do as opposed to just
Hey, put
him
me
dying.
in, coach.
Yeah.
I know how to write, I think.
We may not know how to write the dialogue, but we know. I think that it's a prophecy. They're bringing him back, and like there's a part where I think they said, like, there's that meme of like D.B. Weiss or David Benioff being like, yeah, we kind of forgot about.
Yeah.
They said the Dothraki, but then they
well,
said,
he also says like Danny forgot about the Iron Fleet,
and then
like,
they keep putting little texts underneath. We kind of forgot about, and this we kind of forgot about Azor Ahai, which is Jon Snow coming back from
which
the
they
dead,
didn't have
or
to bring
Beric
up
Dondarrion.
Azor Ahai from the books. They could have just left it out, but they brought it up. You don't bring it up unless you're doing something, not doing it for fan. But they're like, oh, I said the thing.
Yeah, and it keeps coming back to the fact that they're like, oh, we forgot about. They forget about like a lot of these little things that they set up, and like if you're gonna subvert, you have to subvert the expectation overtly. You can't just set it up and like not do it, but make nothing about it.
That's
feels
not
like
a
lazy
subversion.
writing.
Yeah, there has to be an acknowledgement.
Yeah. And I think it can be a
Going back to
subtle
Star Wars
acknowledgement.
when
Or BVS.
Right.
Batman kills people. There's a new kind of mean in him. They make a point to say this is not old Batman.
Right.
Like so, like you got to address it.
when Kylo Ren kills Snoke, they make it a moment. They make it a moment to even their shock on his face. Like, this isn't how this movie's supposed to go, and he falls in half. Like, but there's nothing.
Yeah. And Jon Snow, like, you could say Beric does get his end. Christ crucifies and protects the zombies, but the zombies are just going to keep coming.
Right.
So it's not even like he gives her a few more minutes to get away, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like they definitely don't give Jon a moment, unless you're saying they kept him alive to kill Dany. But I feel like that takes his agency of killing Dany away.
Right.
Because he's destined to do it. Why is he destined to do it? Because he is. Like, why though? Why does he kill her?
And it going back to Destiny, talking about what happens to Cersei when she's a child, the witch,
gives
says
her the prophecy of, you're
that
going to lose your children, and she loses her children. Like,
and also that one of your sibling is going to kill you, and she thinks it's Tyrion, and that's why she's like suspicious of Tyrion the whole time. But we're all like, no, it's going to be Jaime.
And then it's not.
And it's not. He dies with her for no reason. Yeah. Even though their relationship has been destroyed. And one of the great things we wanted from him is to break this cycle of this manipulative, amoral relationship with her.
He goes back to her because he loves her. Like, it's doomed love. I guess it's kind of Martin's motif, but like...
But at that point, it's not even Martin's.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah.
It's now in the hands of them.
You would want Jaime to kill her because the last season he leaves her and she's like, all right, like the mountain. She looks at the mountain like, kill him. And he goes, I don't believe you. And he just walks right past the death machine that she was going to use to kill him.
The Terminator.
So he leaves her. Like, and like that's
he broke the relationship.
He
it's over. The last
Brienne.
straw.
Yeah.
Instead, he's like, I'm a bad person, and I have to go join her because we're bad people. No, there's nothing indicating you're a bad person.
Yeah.
You've changed.
Yeah.
Why do you have to get rocks falling on you?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I never quite bought into he's a good person, but like.
But he's not.
He's trying.
He's not the person that he thinks he should be.
Yeah, and then like he has sex with Brienne, and they have this moment of he makes her a knight of this. That's another little part I liked. He makes her a knight,
the after the battle when everyone's together and like drinking and having a good time. That's before. Yeah. Okay. The reunion episode. A lot of people hated parts of it, and there are a lot of moments I liked in it.
Yeah.
But that's one that's
Everyone's
really kind
like,
of divisive.
She should end up with the Tormund, and I was like, no, she should probably end up with Jaime. Mm-hmm. Tormund will fuck anything that moves.
Tormund was fine. Yeah. Don't worry about Tormund.
But like, he makes
I'm
her
glad he's
a knight.
alive. Yeah, they could have killed him.
He makes her a knight, and she has this look of pure joy on her face as she's now a knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And I was like, oh, good for her.
Yeah, she deserves it.
There's not nothing in here that I like, but like, yeah, they don't follow through on the Jon Snow or the Beric Dondarrion.
Well, there are good moments for side characters, but when you set up grand arcs for major protagonists that don't pay off, you don't get full brownie points for failing the main plot line when you're giving me nice gold subplots.
Yeah, and there's definitely like some pieces of bad writing in it as well. Not even just from like a regular, not even from like a thematic standpoint, but from like that's silly.
Right.
Like there's a part where Arya turns to Jon and she goes, "Trust me, Jon. I know a killer when I see one." Talking about Dany, and it shows a shot of the city just burnt down. Like, really? What gave you that idea? I was like, that's real dumb.
Yeah,
and I was like,
it's almost as dumb as the scene where when after the sacking of King's Landing and Dany comes down and the dragon lands next to her and we see her wings. It's like, boy,
because she's.
I didn't know this was.
Family sigil is the dragon.
I didn't know this was 4D. The TV just punched me in the face like I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
So, there are good and, I mean, do you wish that there had been more like characters that kind of died off during the Battle of Winterfell? Like we know Jorah, we know a few others. Dion.
Jorah's death is fine.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like he dies protecting her essentially, which is what he would do.
And she mourns him.
Yeah,
appropriately.
It's terrible for her. I thought it was very strange how the dragon gets attacked by all the zombies and doesn't just annihilate them like the giant death machine
it also comes to nothing because it's just a fake out.
Yeah. Other things. You're talking about just the battle and characters dying in the battle?
Yeah.
I think we did lose some of them. I think it would have been great for like if we're going for like tragedy and stuff, for like a Brienne to die or something, because there's that part where it's like her and Podrick and some other people, they're just up against a wall.
Yeah,
and there's just
a lot of people were
like
had like their bets like who's not gonna make it. Like they were like Jaime's gonna get it or someone major's gonna get it.
Yeah, he's literally said he's not as good as he used to be with a sword.
Yeah,
so you would be like,
because there's a lot of moments where it's like everyone's doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Everyone's holding off things pretty good for an enemy that has shown to be very devastating.
I would imagine some of those people would die. Theon dies as well.
He's the biggest, I think, other than the Night King. Like Theon, Jorah, and Beric are the biggest.
What would you like to happen with the Night King? What was the thing that you would be like, this would be more interesting?
Well, again, I don't know why they had to subvert it in the way they did. I mean, Jon finishing him off, taking him down some way. Though you bring up a good point with Beric, but I don't know if the audience would have appreciated as much because I'm a populist thinker when I think of media. So I'm like, what's going to be the best?
If you're going to subvert it, he's a nobody, but there's a reason that he would do it. He's been brought back. And also, he lights his sword on fire when he fights. He can fight the ice sword with the fire sword. I'm saying if we're going like real obvious, but trying to subvert it, but still be thematic, that would work.
Right.
Jon, of course, would work as well.
Jon, of course, would work. You could do something like, I mean, Arya ends up being a good choice. Like, I'm like, oh, well, but it would have been great if it was Jon and Arya. Like Jon's kind of getting faltered a little bit. He's kind of messing up, and then Arya ninjas in, and they're able to fight together, and we get to see the conclusion of their friendship and their family.
Uses needle or something.
Yeah,
needle wouldn't work because it's not Valyrian.
Well, maybe she loses it, and like she uses it to like blind him for a second, and then the sword breaks, and it's like that's broken, but their friendship, their family is never going to be broken, or something like that.
Also, why the dagger? Why the dagger the nothing dagger that Littlefinger had? Like it was.
I guess
Valyrian
it's because
steel,
it's Valyrian steel, because it's just like, oh, well, that ended up kind of playing.
Because like there's a couple of like cool weapon like Jon still has Longclaw, I think, but that would be cool. But like I don't really. I think if you're gonna do it the way we do it, or like Arya, I heard someone say, what if Arya disguised herself as a White Walker and then she guts him? And I like that would probably make people more mad because really that's how we're gonna do this, like,
right? But that would have been at least more fitting. It would have been more in character, because that's also what people thought was going to happen to Cersei, is like Jaime was going to die and then she was going to pretend to be Jaime and then killed herself. I think a lot of people are like, that would be awesome.
Yeah, you want her to get her comeuppance. I kind of didn't mind what they did with it instead, though. As far as like the Arya and the Hound kind of steering her,
right?
Like, no, just maybe.
I thought you were talking about what happened to Cersei. I'm like, no, I hate that so much.
No, I hate it too. We're gonna die down here with our baby, and it's because the walls are gonna crush us. I did like when Tyrion found them, and he had that sense of like, I didn't love this woman, but like she killed my family. And I like when he takes off the badge and just be like, you burned a city, and I'm done with you.
Well, we'll get to finish this. So good and bad things, or mostly good, coming out of the final battle of Winterfell.
Yeah, I just don't like that the Night King, we built him up and it's just kind of done so quickly.
And it has no bearing on anything anymore.
Yeah.
Something that not only is mythologically important, but is like, winter comes in this world, and when it comes, it stays. Now, there are some summers that are longer, but we're like, this world knows, hey, when winter comes, like it's a
10-year thing or something.
It's a massacre. Like, people will die in mass, and this is the representation of that. Your pitiful quabbling over politics is nothing to the fate of the world itself.
Yeah.
Instead, they're like, pitiful quabbling is everything about this.
Also, we didn't get a big dragon fight. We didn't get
no dragon on dragon battle.
Ice dragon versus fire dragon. Like,
yeah. Would have been cool.
Yeah,
would have been better for one of the dragons to go out that way than getting speared.
Oh my God, we got to talk about that next. Let's just move on.
Let's
to
just
that
go ahead,
episode
because there's not much in between other than just them getting to
King's Landing.
And we might as well take King's Landing and the arc with
Dany and Jon and all that.
And Pirate Greyjoy.
Who felt like just here so that Tyrion has somebody competently, who's like a competent commander of some sort.
A danger. But
killing that second dragon that way was just done for
cheap dramatic effect,
shock value,
and also they're like, well, she's too powerful with two dragons.
What would have been more dramatic is the ice dragon kills it.
Yes,
kills the other dragon. Her son, her other child,
murders her other child,
who has been mutilated and turned into a undead dragon, kills one of her others. Or whatever. That would have been better.
And it also,
but just like,
and also going after that battle, when they look at the cost of what they've lost, they're like, we're down to one dragon, and Cersei's well prepared.
Yeah.
Like, we're in a deep state, because you don't feel the loss when the battle happens, because the Dothraki army kind of are still there.
Yeah.
There's still some Unsullied. Oh, real quick, the sacking of Highgarden sucks and makes no sense.
Sacking of Highgarden? That happens? When does that happen?
I think that happened in the season before, but
Yeah, Game of Thrones has a very bad problem with skipping the battle.
Yeah,
And
no,
just
they-
like
they-
we've
they-
won,
they-
we're here.
they press X on that cutscene really fast, and it's like, and one of the most competent, powerful, centralized families in Westeros, so plenty of bannermen, is just like, the Lannisters got us.
Yeah.
We lose. What? How? Siege weapons take time to build.
Yeah.
Harrenhal. I mean, not Harrenhal, but the Reach was like. It's probably one of the most baffling moments in the whole series. It's just like they're like, well, nope, Lady Olenna's got to go wrap this up.
I do like the way she kind of like a boss is like she goes like, is there any pain or whatever, when he's like, Jaime, kind of to show that he's sort of changed, and he goes, she talked about having you whipped and flayed and slowly, and
But
and he goes, I talked her out of those, and he goes, and he just gives her the poison, and he goes, is there any pain, and he goes no, and she just goes, all right.
By the
And
way,
she goes, I killed your son.
yeah.
And then he's just like, and she also reveals that she knows that he was fucking his sister.
Yeah.
Because he was like, it must be terrible for a father to witness something like that. Not at all what I intended. I liked that, but they have a very bad problem with skipping the battles, and it really frustrates me.
Well, and it's also kind of like you're telling me that two of the other major areas of this country, the Reach and the South, now are just persona non grata. Like
Yeah.
there's just nothing. So I know that the political system of
Also, you have winter coming, and if you just like, they do a lot of destroying everyone's land and stuff. But doesn't the Reach supply all their
food, it's
and
the
their grain?
breadbasket of the country.
Yeah, so you'd want that to be well taken care of. As
Well,
opposed
don't
to-
worry. I guess it belongs to Bronn now.
Yeah, as opposed to I'm sure he'll do fine with it. As opposed to letting like the mountain ride and burn everything down back a few seasons ago.
But it's like I know the political system of Sunspear, and what's the country down there?
Sunspear is Dorne.
Dorne.
It's like-
The political system of Dorne was annihilated, of course, but that doesn't mean Dorne is no longer there. Like the armies of Dorne still exist.
Yeah.
The armies of the Bannermen of the Highgarden still exist.
Yeah, they would still do something.
And they're nowhere. They're nowhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get to the.
Well, no. The armies of Highgarden are Randall Tarley, Samwell's dad.
That's right.
So the Tarleys get taken out, or most of them probably get taken out when
Daenerys attacks
that
the train. Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably when that happens. But yeah, Dorne is still down there. They just captured the Sand Snake's mom or
Yeah.
whatever.
And killed the other sand snakes.
Yeah. Also, didn't like them. Mean women. Don't like them.
Yeah.
But-
Cool abilities, and would have been fun to stick around, but not much to do with them.
Yeah, they also poison Bronn. It's one of the only time we see Bronn like worried is they poison him. Like this is the antidote or whatever. And I like that's one of the things I don't like about Bronn is he's too good at doing everything and suffering no consequences or anything like that. Like he breaks into Winterfell as there are thousands of guards and stuff. He just
Yeah, and
walks into the
just
door.
walks in and holds the Lannister boys up.
Yeah,
and I'm just like,
traverses the entirety of King's Landing to Winterfell and like
as
an
someone else
episode.
says, does a Skyrim fast travel, and then just goes back.
Yeah,
Whatever.
Yeah, it's like the meme from Empress New Groove. Like, how did you get here before us? I don't know. It really doesn't make any sense. Like,
I mean, that's also Varys's amazing motorboat powers to go from one country to another to another.
yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, he just walks in and talks to those women, fire and blood. Like, how did you get here?
How did you get Varys?
Yeah. Do we care for the way Varys goes out? I think Varys goes
They didn't
out
know what
on
to
his,
do with Varys.
They did, but I think that is how he would go out. I think when he saw Dany starting to slip, if we're gonna commit to that, which you may not need or want or should do that,
But we have to no matter what.
But yeah, like if you're gonna do that, he definitely would take the information about Jon Snow's heritage and just tell people. Because he knows Jon Snow would be a good leader. And it's like him and Tyrion have said like the people who should have power are the people
The ones who don't want it.
And he's like, Jon doesn't want it, but he has a great claim for the throne, and he would be a great and wise leader, probably better than her. And so he goes out and she tells Varys, if you betray me again, I'll kill you. Tyrion asks her not to, and Varys knows what's coming, and he does it anyway.
Right.
Varys, for the show at least, this show version of Varys would do that. At the end of book 5, Varys is seen with a bunch of like white children, like undead children, and they kill. Like, I think kill Kevin Lannister and stuff. It implies that he knows about the White Walkers and he's like, in cahoots. And I'm like, how? It's like, anyway.
That's interesting,
I'm
though.
sure Martin will come up with a convoluted way to make that make sense that won't satisfy anybody. But yeah, so I actually cared for that. Varys is actually one of the characters in the show I kind of like.
Yeah.
It's weird how they make him so much more positive than they do in the book.
Performance also has a lot to do with it. Also has a lot to do with that guy.
What's that guy's name? Conleth Hill?
Conleth Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Conleth Hall.
Yeah, he's good. So Clegane Bowl, really dumb. Again, if you're doing like the Joseph Campbell story of hero ventures out and learns new things and how to create an arc, the arc should be thematically he kills him using fire because fire is what gave him his scar, and it would make,
And it's his only trauma. The only thing that scares him is fire.
yeah. And you could say like, oh, but he pushes them off the building into fire. Like, yeah, but he didn't know that was there.
Right, he didn't know the
As he
city was
falling-
exploding.
As he was falling down, he could have been like, oh fuck,
Yeah.
and then like, yeah. But I definitely liked. I like part of the fight, and I don't. I think there is a weird problem when you make the like one. I really wanted the Mountain to die when Oberyn got him, but like when you bring him back and turn him into like a rage monster zombie.
Well, in the books, he's just known as Robert Strong.
Robert Strong,
But
yeah.
it's
it
still
implies that he has no head on either.
right. Well, it's debated that they don't know if it even is the Mountain.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but they also think that what's his name, the wizard working out the Cersei's right hand person, Qyburn, yeah, Qyburn, Master Qyburn, is like doing some Frankenstein shit.
Yeah.
Like there are people like, oh, it has the head of the reason why it's all purple is because it has the head of Joffrey. Like it's like some people said like, oh, it's like Joffrey's head under there. That's why it's all purple because it's from the poison. And
No,
it's
the mountain.
It's just the mountain.
Yeah.
It's just the mountain from the poison he got.
What did you feel about it? Did you like it, or was it?
The shot when they first see each other is great. I think everyone was waiting for that shot.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted it to be more personal. I wouldn't have minded if the Hound got away.
Also, the Kingsguard are nothing. The Hound kills like 3 of them really quick.
Yeah, and that's again the defeat of Highgarden makes no sense.
Yeah.
I would have even been fine if the Hound's like the Hound is supposed to beat his brother. And that is Clegane Bowl, and it's supposed to be ground shattering and everything. We've all been waiting for it. Clegane Bowl, and it ends up being kind of a side note. They give it a lot of time, but it's a side note. And I would have still been fine if he just like beheaded him, bested him somehow, and then got away. And then the Hound goes off to live his life, thought to be dead again.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
It would have been impossible given the city burning around him,
Probably.
but it would have been better if the fight was more mutual instead of it just seems like they're like, we gotta wrap it up.
Also,
Wrap it
having
up.
the fight on the stairs, like let them get down the stairs onto like a nice level
Even
playing
platform,
ground,
so we can get
can
some
have
good-
some good fighting stuff going on or whatever. I do like the part where like the Hound gets a good strike in, like he stabs him with the sword and it doesn't do anything. He's like, God, just fucking die! Like,
Yeah, I love that. Why don't you just die?
and yeah, I like that. I just don't like the way it wraps up. I like the way that it kills Qyburn.
Yeah, I had to rewind that a few times. So like his head explodes like a melon.
Yeah.
I was like, wait. He just throws him and his head explodes.
Which I felt like fine because that guy is
He's a twerp.
He's a twerp and a creepy little guy, and I don't like him.
Yeah,
and
he
I
has a
feel like
lot of power though. Like
Yeah.
he's the mechanizer of a lot of
death.
and destruction. And,
Yeah, kills Pycelle with kids.
Yeah.
Gives kids a bunch of knives. And just kill this old man, please.
because that's during the destruction of
explosion of the Sept of
the
Baelor.
Sept. Yeah,
Yeah.
he just kind of end of he kind of pulls an end of The Godfather and has everyone killed.
Yeah. Let's talk about Jon killing Dany, and I guess we'll wrap it up.
Well, let's talk real quick about
Or whatever
the
you want.
destruction of because I want to get back to the image of the invaders and why this looks so bad. So beyond just the massacre of King's Landing, which doesn't really make any sense because it doesn't work for the optics
They
of
killed
Danny.
Missandei, and a lot of people on like Facebook or were saying like when the episode aired, like these are the same people that cheered and like cut Ned Stark's head off. And I was like, yeah, but they don't know anything other than what the people in power tell them.
Yeah,
you tell them
they're
Ned
just
Stark
peasants.
you tell them Ned Stark is a traitor and this kid who they've never met is a king. They might think Joffrey is a normal king and that this guy deserved it.
They've seen weirder stuff.
Yes.
Like they saw a long fingernailed dragon man as king forever, and they're just like, well, he's the king. What do you want?
Yeah, what are you supposed to do?
The camera's not on any of us.
Yeah.
It's not our
So
story.
killing them because of like, oh, they'll cheer for anything. It's like, no, you didn't. They don't know what's happening.
Right. They don't have Twitter like you do.
Yeah,
like they
right.
don't. They're not all. They
So
can't do.
go back to you said the invasion looks really bad.
So there is an under element of the fear of the invader, and the invader, because Westeros is primarily all white.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of white, a lot of white European Eurotypes. The Unsullied are mostly coded, or if not out, African descent,
Yeah.
or Mediterranean descent, or Arabic descent.
Yeah.
The,
Olive skinned mostly.
right. So is the same with the Dothraki.
Dothraki, and that's
Since and
probably some of the wildlings too. Maybe. I don't know.
and so it's always there's this underset of they're coming, the exotic foreign invaders are coming, and they're going to do everything horrible to us. And instead of doing what's the right thing, which is that they don't, they do, and we see the Unsullied massacre innocent and all kinds of people, and so do the Dothraki, and just prove that point.
Do the Unsullied do that?
They're slaughtering innocent soldiers who put their arms down with
Oh, yeah,
spears
that's
and
right. Yeah, I
everything, and
remember
it's just the image of the fear of a brown planet. And I don't know why they did that. It seems horribly irresponsible. It doesn't make any sense. Again,
Well, I guess the Unsullied follow their queen.
They do follow their queen.
Danny is killing everybody, so maybe
But-
it's the bad chain of command.
it is, but I feel like it's not a good look, and it proves something that didn't need to be proved in it. Like that there's like this, like their fear was justified, which seems really inappropriate.
Yeah,
And
that sack of King's Landing is bad. John stops a guy from raping someone. I
Yeah.
think.
it's
no joke.
and by the end, the white pale horse walks through of Arya, and it's just like we're all just kind of left, just like some people were like, "Whoa!" And I remember at first being like, "Wow!" And now I'm just kind of like, it just sank. The destruction of that just sank the whole plot. At that point, there's nothing left.
Because she thinks Cersei is getting away with something, or
Mm-hmm.
like ringing the bells, asking for mercy. Like, yeah, like if I'm Daenerys Targaryen, I go, one dragon is enough for me to clinch this whole thing.
Right.
She will ask for mercy.
Yeah, you've
I
destroyed
will win.
you've destroyed the Scorpions. Like they've got they have no armaments that will take this thing on. You have the better army. It's over.
After destroying the Navy and the battlements, like you have the superior army.
Right.
The Golden Company run like bitches. by
Yeah,
the way.
'cause that's all they have
No
is-
battle. Like the battle is just nothing.
No, it's just a massacre.
Yeah.
Because it's not Danny's fault. It's the writer's fault.
Yeah.
It's they wanted to rush this, and they had a stick up their ass to tell them, I want to tell this plot of this person becoming a tyrant. And she's going to become a tyrant for whatever convenient reason possible, and we're going to make it as graphic and horrifying as
And
possible.
usually that's not how tyrants work.
No.
The way tyrants usually work is they already have an entitlement to power.
Right.
Danny comes from nothing and then kind of like what would
She has
make,
a claim
what
of
would make
power.
more sense is like the Mad King's what happens with the Mad King. He's already king. Or like maybe the Mad King is a nice king, and then his son Viserys, who's a lunatic, becomes king, and he's a tyrant because he has power and he feels entitled to it.
Right.
And it's like you see like Donald Trump sticking the military and the National Guard on these protesters. It's like it's an entitlement to power and the order. And this
it's
is
bad-
my table, and you don't play with things on my table.
And it's bad optics and ends up not working for them. Like you said, it would have been great to see Danny get power, become queen.
It'd be terrible
And then
at ruling.
when all the pressure gets to her, she
execute them, like
right,
whatever.
asserts dominance and authoritarianism, and then burns part of the city to show like, don't fuck with me. And that's when everyone's like, she's got to go.
Yeah.
Like she couldn't handle it, and that makes more sense. Like that's why, and to me, this is why I wish they would have done this 2 seasons.
Or just make this one longer.
Yeah. Well, they were all
10
like, it has to be.
episodes is
It's
a lot.
not enough time. But they all built it like
this one was 6 episodes.
6 episodes.
But
And they're
10
like,
episodes.
6 episodes coming up on the 3rd episode. It needed to be a whole other season.
Yeah.
Because you've built all this political intrigue and everything, and we were all in for it. We were fine with it.
Or get to the Battle of Winterfell earlier.
Yeah.
And then you have 9
Or the Battle of
8
Winterfell
episodes.
last.
Yeah, or that too. Well, no, I feel like if you deal with her first, that's interesting.
Well, again, we're getting
What if they get
into-
past Winterfell? I guess you write it to where
Yeah.
they're taking their time for some
Well, then you
reason.
would have gotten to see the night. You would have gotten, the Night King in central Westeros
Or
and
at King's Landing.
at King's Landing, and then all forces come together, and it's the apocalyptic battle. It's the battle that's going to decide
Yeah, that's dope.
if
I
this
like that.
country freezes.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that, so we just have to write those stories in our head to make ourselves feel better.
I hate it, man.
So I kind of see what they did to Dany as a character assassination. It's not earned, it's not justified, and then John
After the battle, she seems back to normal.
sort
She
of
seems kind of like back to like, oh well, it's time to rule, and we'll break the wheel, and we'll give them justice. And I was like,
And everyone-
maybe this could just be a bad day. and
yeah,
we could
maybe
steer
we'll
her
just
back
let
to-
it go. Well, it's also like Tyrion becomes this simpering character who's just kind of like begging all
Begs
all-
John to do the right thing.
Well, he
and
begs
stuff.
everybody. He's just like, Cersei, you're not like this. Yes, she is. Dany, you're not like this. Well, apparently she is. And so when you end up with the small council, when we get to, do you want to get to the naming of the king?
Yeah, I guess they decide that it's democracy, and Tyrion. Does
The last
weird,
remaining people are there, which I was
the
some of
lords
them,
of each of the big houses. Essentially,
whoever's still alive, essentially. Everyone else kind of died.
Tyrion does a weird Jungian speech about what really connects us to stories and mythology.
Which is, again, the writers just
Patting himself on
patting
the back.
that
You
back,
think?
man. Hey, audience, we told you the best story that gave us millions of dollars. Wouldn't you agree that it's stories that matter the most?
Yeah, or something like
Pat,
that. Is that what you
Pat,
thought? I just
Pat.
thought it was like a weird, like philosophical thing. I'm like,
Oh, no.
I guess.
It just screamed.
And he goes,
that
"Who
it's-
has the best stories?" And he goes, "Bran." And I'm like, he has an okay story.
We've seen everybody's story.
If you had to pick a person to be king, you would pick Tyrion or Jon or someone like that.
Well, I know why they
you
wouldn't
pick
pick-
Von Royce. You wouldn't pick Edmure. You
No.
wouldn't pick the people from Dorne. You wouldn't pick like. I guess Sansa would be good, but
But she
she
wasn't.
doesn't
But for
seem,
some
yeah.
reason, she's like, no, I'm just going to be insurgent factor. I'm just going to be a king of. I'm just going to be the Lord of Winterfell.
which seems
Unnecessary now.
potentially worrisome for the future. But anyway,
But it's that idea that there's always a lord in Winterfell. There's always a king in the north.
always a Stark in Winterfell. There must
Right.
always be a Stark in Winterfell. And yeah, I guess they picked the right person, but I think it's like you wrote yourself into that situation.
Because I know they wouldn't give it to Tyrion. Because at that point, Tyrion's about to be executed. Like he's been found to be complicit. And so they're like, they're not going to give it to Tyrion, and Tyrion wouldn't want it. We know one thing about Tyrion is he wouldn't want to be king. He want to have power in that respect, but he wouldn't want to be king. So at that point, he's just kind of like working his way. It's almost like he's spinning their wheels because it's what he's best at. He's like, let me tell you about how great stories are. And let me tell you about my boy over here in the wheelchair who can see the future in the past. He's our guy. And then, again, like you said, Bran's just like, you're right. You chose wisely.
Yeah. I kind of was like, if he could see the future in the past, wouldn't he just like, it's like insider trading. Wouldn't he just make all the decisions that led? So is he fatalist? Is he doomed to make the decisions?
That's the
to
problem with
future?
predestination. Is
Or
like
is
if he does any kind of clashing down, it's just like, well, it was fated.
I can't feed these people. Why? Because they all die eventually. It's
No.
in the future. What do you mean? Like,
He's a nihilist king.
yeah, it's like, what does that mean? But so it was confusing. And he doesn't even seem to want it. He doesn't seem to want anything.
Well, he takes like 2 strikes. He's like, I don't want it. I don't want it. I was meant to have it. And it almost becomes sinister, almost like Bran's been playing everybody from the beginning too. Just been like,
it does
like
a little bit.
It's like it worked. He kind of does the Kaiser Soze, like he just gets up and just starts like
Walking.
Yeah, just like I did it, king now. I really hate how schmaltzy that final table is.
That is the table you would want.
It's
they're
a table,
mostly good, smart people,
but it's
even
also
Braun.
mostly who's still alive.
Yeah.
And it's a ragtag group of people, which makes sense. They're the only ones left. I thought about this coming here was like, what would have been better is a time skip, like a year. And instead we see big council, but the main people who like people all over, guards, everything. We see that order has been restored from an orderless land. But we see all the people dressed in nice are Braun, Davos, Brienne, everybody who still survived has gotten to be who they are, and now we're going off to the future.
Yeah.
Instead, it's just like, guys, what another great story in this Game of Thrones, am I right? And they all just cheers and the screen freezes. Like it kind of has a little bit of that.
It is, yeah. And like they use the old Game of Thrones theme as John goes off north to be like, I'm happy doing jack shit.
Yeah, he's like, and that I almost was just kind of like, there's a subversion that kind of worked for me is where John ends up. Like, he's been our hero. He's been the king. He's been the one where like he's gonna be the triumphant hero, and he ends up sweating at the bottom of a prison cell, and he's just like,
if anything, if you want to really subvert it, like John kills Dany and then John is executed or whatever.
Right. Which I think the smarter thing is just like everything goes back to the way it begins. You're going back to the wall.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit like, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
There's something interesting about that, what they pulled on us.
Yeah.
Which is like, no, sometimes you just end up going back to the wall, but there's no wall, so I took it as he's going to become king of the north.
I think the big thing is he's going to take the wildlings and help them settle their land.
Yeah, he's going to become the new Mance
peacefully.
Raider. He's going to be the king beyond the wall, I mean, not the king of the north. He's going to become king beyond the wall.
Yeah.
Arya goes off to have another series that didn't happen.
It's not happening? I thought
I thought they canceled it.
Oh, we'll
I don't
see,
know.
guess.
Arya essentially is just like, hey guys, I'm gonna go and have my own show that everyone will want to watch. Someone made a great joke like, "What's beyond Westeros? The Resteros."
Should they make Gendry king of Storm's End?
Kind of nice.
Yeah.
Kind of nice. He gets that.
Yeah,
That
he
they're like,
deserves it.
hey Gendry, you've been. It's also a nice way to neutralize that threat because
Yeah.
he's also has a claim to the throne as Baratheon's bastard.
But I think he's mellow enough to be like, well, he'll be loyal to me because I made him Lord of Storm's End.
Exactly.
So no.
Because that's a way like.
Which doesn't really come back into anything.
Well, they just paid
Like,
him off essentially. It's like
what would be
this kid can still
interesting is if
become king.
what would be interesting is like if we reach the last episode or a couple of episodes and it's like now it's Dany versus them.
Yeah.
And their armies versus her or whatever.
Yeah,
They
it's
have
like-
to kill her dragon.
Well,
and
there's
kill
like
her.
there's your time skip there. Like we find out that Gendry has taken Storm's End and has rallied an army of people who are like, she's a danger. I'm the legitimate.
and it all just keeps going.
Yeah, and the battle
That's real.
continues.
If you want to get real George Martin-y and real fatalist, like that's
Yeah.
the way to do it.
We could have chosen death by nature, but we have chosen death by endless
Yeah.
conflict. Instead, Sam comes up with the concept of democracy, and everyone laughs at him.
They go, ah, what an idiot.
Also, love Sam. Sam's great. He's also just George R. R. Martin's stand-in.
You think so?
Yeah, because he's the what
Says what we would say, I guess.
what would have been great. And this is at
the end, he's head of House Tarly. That's
he's
why
head of House
there.
Tarly, and he's also the new Meister.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's the new Meister. What would have been great is if you had a huge time jump, and he's an old man, and he's like, "I'm glad I got to tell the story of the Song of Ice and Fire." And it's all from his writings. It's all from his experience. Like, I came from the wall. I came from all this. And no one would have thought that just some loser like me would end up being the historian that has told the story of the Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been nice. I thought that was so obvious they would have done that. No. So, last things. What would you have liked to have, not the whole season, like the last shot, like the final thing to see?
The last shot of the
Like,
season?
what would you have wanted that last shot or last 5 minutes of Game of Thrones to have been? To kind of like make it wrap up in that very last moment.
If we're trying to wrap it up all nicely, as far as like,
Well, even not nicely, because you're hoping that the season wrapped it up nicely, and now we're in the final denouement.
I don't know, like after that season, it's like, what do you do to wrap it up nicely?
Like,
I mean,
you just
really,
showed
it is like
John just going off.
because it leaves more threads at the end that would be put like that doesn't answer all of its own questions. So my hope would be to answer the questions. Where's Drogon? Oh, he's flying off somewhere. Brand's like, I'll find him and do what?
Yeah.
like he's just a giant like mad dragon at this point, or like things like that that are just sort of left open. You would want to seal those off.
Yeah.
Maybe he goes off to find like the lands to the west or something. Maybe the Night King isn't even dead. You see the hand twitch at the end, and he stands back up.
It's like the Iron Giant.
Yeah.
Like it's just like parts of him start rolling back together.
But I honestly don't even know. I mean, as far as John, the way it ends, John going back up north, everyone's going back to their places. I feel like that's okay.
That's
But
okay.
the stuff that happens before it is not okay, and that's why it doesn't feel okay.
Yeah.
Like, what would you? I mean, I guess like
I keep coming back to the term time skip. I would love to see a few years later.
Yeah.
Not immediately, a few years later. What do we have to expect for this land? What do we have to expect for these people?
because it's still winter. Winter is starting.
Winter
now.
is still coming. That's not going to stop. Killing the Ice King doesn't end global warming.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't. It's essentially that. I would have loved to then be like 5 years later, 10 years later.
Yeah.
Not even like where everybody is, just what's happening in the world. Like camera fades 10 years later. Camera's up. It's winter and it's winter in King's Landing. And we see we get hints of what's happening. Maybe like on the horizon you see Drogon coming back. And they're just kind of like they're like, I hope this works, because he's like trying to work. He's trying to warg into him.
Oh
or
yeah, I
something.
guess I forgot. Brand does that.
He can warg.
He hasn't done that in a while though. Has he? Yeah, he did. He used the ravens to see the Night King coming. All right.
Yeah, he uses surveillance drones.
Yeah. I
So
always love that the Night King knows when he's being watched. Like, there's a part where he does it before he's the three-eyed raven, and the Night King just goes.
Well, there's-
the ravens scatter immediately.
well,
Like,
there's something there. Like, why can't the Night King have the same powers as the three-eyed raven we discover? Like, he also has that. No, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, we've gotten this far in this rambling discussion of the show.
Yeah.
We still loved. I still like it.
yeah. I would watch the final season again, but I would just be like, for a lot of it.
I think I'm gonna find a lot of, as I do, because I've always been raised as a daydreamer and spent a lot of time just coming up with things to
Yeah, me
entertain
too.
myself.
That's what I do.
I'll always think about what could have been and take a moment of satisfaction. Like I've taken a big snort of imagination and I'm like, this will get me through the day.
Yeah.
Instead of what happened.
And we'll, I think that we'll get a spin-off show of this. It's too successful for them to
it's not
leave it.
over. I mean, it's not over.
Yeah,
Like
and the spin-off show will probably also be pretty dope. So hopefully
Yeah.
that's gonna be.
again, we know it's going to be Targaryen based. You know, it's going to be set in the past. I think that's kind of boring. That's just me. I don't care about the Targaryens that much.
Also, we kind of know what happens.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a history that he wrote that book, Fire and Blood, which is just a history of the
Finish
Targaryens.
your story, Martin.
Yeah,
Stop
Winds of
gilding the
Winter.
lily.
Get to Winds of Winter.
It's been
and A
how
Dream of
long?
Summer.
Game of Thrones came out in 2011,
Well,
and the fifth book just
I
came out.
thought that Martin was going to see how the last season tanked and was going to be like
I'm gonna fix
calling
it
up his
up,
publisher like, ready it.
I'm fixing the book, baby.
Because he's like, I would have been like, he's like sitting there waiting. He knows the script. He's laughing quietly. He's putting his hat down below his
Well, he
eyes.
told them like the outline, of where things
And then they
end,
filled everything
like,
else up. And I think even he said like, ew, how that season ended.
He did.
I think so. I think he kind of waffled on it, but it would have been a very smart move on him to just release the book that summer and say like, hey, did this Games of Thrones disappoint you?
Well, he has two books left. He has Winds of Winter
and
A Dream of Spring.
Reign of Spring.
Yeah.
It would have been great if he dropped Winds of Winter then. Like that would have been like a record scratch. Like he would have been like, there it is. And everyone would have been like,
It's got to be done by now. He's been
why
working on
not?
it for so long.
Why not?
Yeah.
Anyway, we hope he gets to it. Obviously, we may see more from the world of Game of Thrones. I obviously talked about I would love a Game of Thrones set 100 years after the events of this battle,
In
of the
like-
Battle
in
of Five
a-
Armies,
in a early 1900s technology,
or
era.
even 2000 style, like
Yeah,
modern
like
age.
Bright is what I call it.
Yeah, well, where again a world forgets its past until the past comes roaring back in. But now we've got suits and ties and armored soldiers.
That would be in keeping with like what happens here because they forgot about magic and stuff. I would just like show me Robert's Rebellion and stuff. Show me like some of the myths and unanswered questions from that we've been hearing about through all these books and stuff.
Because even though the Targaryens bore me, I still would like a world that's more that deep in that fantasy. Like we see the original battles. We see the like if we're talking Star Wars, the KOTOR levels of the past.
Yeah. I'd watch that. You can watch the Doom of Old Valyria and stuff, or Robert's Rebellion would be cool.
Robert's Rebellion would be great.
It'd be cool to see like those old knights. Like you could see, like we see them for a little bit. The Tower of Joy, where Ned fights Sir Arthur Dane.
Yeah,
when he's a younger man.
Because Arthur Dane is supposed to be this great fighter, and
they kill him with a sword to the back of his face.
Yeah.
Like,
and then that's where Reed is his man at arms.
That's Jojen and Mira's dad helps him essentially. All that stuff would be cool. I don't really have anything else to say.
It's just kind of, I think the last thing I want to say is, I guess our disappointment, who's really at fault? Our expectations or the writers? And I think it's somewhere in between.
We'll see when the Snyder Cut comes out because my expectations are pretty high.
There's an experiment going on in fan and general theory versus the final product. We saw it with Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, Mark Bernardin on Kevin Smith's podcast says there's a reason fans shouldn't be allowed to dictate what they get because they would just have Batman never dies ever and beats everybody and the Red Wedding never happens. Here's the thing, though. I'm a person who loves to let the creatives do. I was on a thing on Facebook, a post, and it was like, someone said, like, oh, what if it was like a Zack Snyder appreciation group I'm on, and it said, like, what if the Snyder Cut comes out and it's terrible? And I goes, don't worry about like what you want it to be. Like, let it be what it is, and then just watch it.
Right.
That's what I always say. Like, I don't have demands. Zack Snyder better not kill. Like, or George R. R. Martin better not. Like, I don't do that.
It's not my call. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I agree that fans shouldn't be allowed to write stuff, but if the fans demand a thing, maybe make the thing.
Well, it's like I think that's one of the things I said after the final season was just like whether we like it or not, that's what happened.
Yeah.
It's what happened. It's the same I felt with Star Wars. I'm like, I didn't like Rise of Skywalker, but I'm not going to sit there and scream non-canon.
I demand
it happened.
J.J. Abrams get the whole cast together and reshoot it.
No, clearly, because none of them had fun doing it.
Also, very similar. He sets up new things that don't ever get resolved. Did Rey was Finn in love with Rey? Rey, I've always, and then nothing comes of it. Like I see a similar.
We
thing
already
here.
did that episode.
Yeah.
Well,
this has been. Our podcast is up on iTunes now, or it should be by the time you hear this.
Yes, we are very happy to announce we're up for review for iTunes.
Yeah, so that should be happening soon, and we'll be coming at you guys with more content. Matt, do you want to sign us off?
Well. I won't do it in an embarrassing medieval accent, but I will say thank you for listening. I hope you're all doing well. Take care. This has been The Movie Date with Rob and Matt, a movie podcast for people who enjoy talking about movies that don't want to be too smug about it.
Too smug about it. You can be a little smug about it.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Just a touch. Just for a treat.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.